Good morning, everyone. We're going to get this show on the road. We got a lot to discuss. Lisa, are you good up there? You hear us all right?
Yep, can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. We'll be good to go. And YouTube, are we good on YouTube? They got sound today on YouTube? Right on. And we're good here. So I'll call this meeting to order. It is straight up 10 o'clock. And Eric, you want to lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have some really good agenda items this morning, and we're going to have lots of discussion, I'm sure. So let's get this started with 2A, information discussion regarding the regulations of vacation rentals and short-term rentals. Randy, you're in Payson, I see. Good morning.
Morning. I am in Payson. I'm not feeling great, so instead of infecting you, I'm just infecting them.
Yeah.
So this morning we're going to be talking about, or having a discussion about short-term rentals and the update of Senate Bill 1168. So the purpose really is to provide information on short-term rentals, provide information regarding background and the state statutes, and have a discussion on the regulations of short-term rentals. And by the way, short-term rentals is also Airbnb, VRBO, whatever you want to call them. So one of the questions is, what is a short-term rental? Basically, it's a rental of a dwelling unit that is for less than 30 days. So it can be weekends, it can be 2 weeks at a time, so on and so on. They're usually advertised on Airbnb's website, VRBO, but they also can be on Facebook, putting in the newspaper, just word of mouth. One of the big concerns of short-term rentals is the neighbors. So the neighbors usually have pretty much standard concern is noise. Some of these people are up there just to party, and they can be out there until late in the morning and late at night, just out there partying and playing. Traffic and parking. If you get more than, a normal house would hold of 2 to 6 people, let's say, and you start getting in the 20 and 30s, they start taking up all the parking spaces on the streets. And now the people that are living in the area have no place to park. There's concerns about crime, safety, sanitation problems, and this is not just junk, trash, and debris, but this is also sanitation, whether the septic system can handle it or any of the other stuff. Affecting the character of the neighborhood. And then one of the concerns is declining in the availability of affordable housing and supply for long-term rentals. Now, some of these things we can address and some of these things we cannot. So basically in 2016, there was Senate Bill 1150, which basically said you can't do anything to stop anyone from having a short-term rental. You can't deal with zoning, you can't deal with anything really. And they said you could enforce public health and safety regulations, but they didn't define it. So it was kind of hard to deal with that. Then in 2019, there was House Bill 2672, where they started coming back, and because of all the problems that had occurred or that they'd been notified about, they started allowing a little bit of regulations. That they could be charged a lodging tax. They weren't supposed to have events that are non-residential. Well, the problem is that's a real tough thing to define. If you had a wedding at your house one time, is that a residential use? You have it every weekend, probably not a residential use. They were also required to provide contact information for emergencies. Well, the problem was they would give a number when they first got their tax license and didn't keep it up. So when an event happened where someone needed to contact an emergency person, they said, oh, I'm no longer doing that. And it was kind of a useless part. Now in July of 2022, this is where Senate Bill 1168 comes into play. And it went into effect full on September 24th of 2022. And it allows a few things. It's getting a little bit restrictor. And basically, by the way, Senate bill is updating ARS statute 11269.17. And it allows for us to require, or allow any jurisdiction to require permitting and our license. The process for that, they have to have emergency contact, and that comes with penalties if it's not kept up. You have to notify all of the adjacent neighbors and directly across the street. Then there's allowed to be fines for verified violations and penalties. If you have 3 of these issues in one 12-month period, your license can be, or permit can be suspended. They also are supposed to be doing sex offender background checks. Now, this is usually done through the site, but this is also now applying to the people that are the contact person running it, so on. Excuse me. Then we have, they are required to carry $500,000 worth of liability insurance. And then the license number or permit number, or however it's decided, those have to be shown when they advertise. And I will say, if we decide to move forward with this regulation and you go to Airbnb or anything else, they're pretty restrictive. If they know that we are licensing this, they won't let them advertise on their website unless they provide that number. Currently, Gila County does not regulate this. There are, and I've been told this number by a few agencies, we have roughly 1,200 short-term rentals in Gila County. Most of them, I'm going to say around 700, are in the Pine Strawberry area. The enforcement activities, you know, if code enforcement gets called out, sometimes the people that are complaining will say, this is an Airbnb, this is the issue. But we don't regulate them now, so there's no real tracking of Airbnbs for the sheriff's office, for us, for the assessors, any of us. It's not being tracked currently, so I can't give you data that says we have this many issues in doing that. The assessors have 1,900 people renting that have renter numbers, accounts. They can't divide that out between Airbnb and a long-term rental, a hotel. They are looking to be changing that and moving forward with being able to show that and divide that out correctly. Staff has reached out to the other 14 counties to see what everyone else is doing. Excuse me. Currently, all of them are looking at it. Some don't want to do anything, but the elected officials are telling them to do it because of the issues that have come along. Some already have some but didn't enforce it. And some now are getting, writing a new ordinance or updating their old ordinance so that they can enforce it, not heavier, but more directly. because of the lack of state statute that allowed anything to go forward, they had a hard time enforcing anything before. Recommendations in moving forward is that we would regulate short-term rentals, and we are allowed to require a permit and or a license. Currently, staff would think we would do this with a use permit, and we are allowed to charge up to $250 per rental. You can, the state statutes also gets involved in how we can turn them down or why they can be turned down. In other words, if they meet all the requirements, you have to issue your permit. We also, under the new regulations, the emergency contact information will have to be kept up. If they had an emergency and a call was made, they can be fined up to $1,000 if that person is not available or that the number hasn't been updated. And this is a substantial issue that we have heard in the past. The one good thing is the neighborhood notification. Now, the problem with this is it doesn't give a lot of credence to notifying them. So let's say there's 7 houses that are in adjacent and across the street, and they notify them. Under state statute doesn't say that if they don't want it, we cannot issue the permit, but it just says that they have to be notified. Sex offender background checks is not only for the people renting, but also for the people that are running the business. The liability insurance, the $500K that we talked about, that they would have to display their permit numbers and their license number, however it was decided. This does, under the new state statute, does allow, under verified violations, a $500, a $1,000, and a $3,500 fine. That's starting to get their attention. You know, the problem with short-term rentals that it has come to light is a lot of people don't live here, and they just do it online, or, you know, they have people that come in and clean and deal with it. And we have a lot of really good companies and or individuals running these, but we have some that are causing issues for the rest. Sorry. So part of our recommendations is that we would come back with a standalone ordinance and administrative process that allows for the administrative violations, such as they're renting out to sex offenders, they're renting out to sober living homes, those kind of things. Those are violations. Sober living has its own state statute, and so they're not allowed to rent out to sober living. Over here. So again, staff would come back with a standalone ordinance if this is the wishes. We would look at some time frames of implementing this if it was to go forward. You know, like I said, there's 1,200 out there, and to come up with a process, and there's going to have to be some public relations and outreach to let everyone know. Currently, staff has talked to, I'm going to say, up to 20 individuals. Some of them are people renting or the business of renting, and some are just neighbors. So far, all of them have been for the regulations. The good operators and good renters Really don't mind because they're probably already doing all the stuff that's on there. It's the ones that are not that the neighbors and everyone are saying, yes, do this, do this. You know, we have one guy currently that tries to rent out a 4-bedroom house to 45 people for weddings and corporate events. As you can understand, septic system's not made to handle that. And that's a lot of vehicles in the neighborhood. We have people that have bonfires that have, you know, pallets and 6-foot high bonfires going on. Again, we don't regulate, or we don't track these. These are just complaints that we have been brought to us and say that is an Airbnb house. We have no way of verifying it at this time. So our staff's recommendation is that we would pursue this with a standalone ordinance and moving forward. At this time, I'm open for any questions.
Randy, thank you. Supervisor Humphrey, start with you.
Yeah, good morning, Randy. I have a few questions. One, like you said, you know, short-term rentals, motels, hotels, bed and breakfasts, those will probably be excluded from these regulations?
Correct. These are dwelling units, which a hotel motel is not a dwelling unit. These are dwelling units in the neighborhoods.
Okay. Another question, will the fines be implemented through our hearing officer? Or how will the fines be implemented on the people for negligence?
That's one of the things during our ordinance that we would pursue. Also, it can be from the court. It's a court action. But we would have to rewrite the hearing officer ordinance to accommodate that. And of course, we would be working with the county attorney and everyone else and making sure we do that correctly.
Okay, so if we go forward with this, that's something that would need to be done? Because if it's a blight problem or a health issue or something like that, then I don't know that it would go to court to implement a fine upon them. So that would be on our, it would need to be written so that our hearing officer could see these complaints and judge them.
The hearing officer currently can hear health issues. He is, that is already written in, so that can be done. And most of the stuff, if the sheriff was to go out, that becomes a court issue. So either one of those would be violations. Where we would need this is under code enforcement, junk, trash, debris, you know, those kind of things that we would need to write the hearing officer into those kind of issues.
Okay, yeah, because if we're going to implement penalties, we need to know who's responsible for putting those penalties on them. And also, too, just a question, is the extra burden on staff on putting implementations on these rentals?
That has been a big topic around my office. We could handle the first year of issuing, and like I said, we were planning on use permits or a special use permit. We could handle that currently because it's a drawn out process. But going forward with the money that's brought in, we would be seeking another full-time code enforcement officer to deal with this issue.
Yeah, because we just have one code enforcement, well, we have two code enforcement officers for all of Gila County, and I realize that they're burdened with a lot of complaints at this point, and so putting more on their backs is a big concern of mine.
Yeah, and with the $250 fee, we would be able to bring a full-time person on with everyone's permission, county manager, yourselves, and cover the cost of that with those fees.
Okay, thank you, Randy. No more questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, James.
my understanding is that these fees would allow to hire 2 new FTEs to administer all of this, so that there would be 2 full-time employees with the county in community development to administer whatever is passed.
Do you think we would need to?
From what I understand, the analysis and the effort that would be required to administer it would be pretty close to 2 people.
Okay, does that help, Tim?
Yeah, not a whole lot, but some. Thank you.
Supervisor Christensen?
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. I have a couple things I just want to clarify. So what if the owner of the house is a corporation? How does that affect notification? Who is liable? Has that been thought through?
The state statute says that they're supposed to supply a contact person. So we would not accept on the application that it's A, B, and B enterprise. It would have to be a individual with their contact information, and there is a time frame that goes along with that. So if it's a standard, issue, let's just say there's some trash around the property, that could be a 24-hour that they have to contact us. If it's a true emergency, there's some flexibility on that time frame that can get it down to like 12 hours that they are required to contact us once we have left a message for that contact person. Again, we would not contact a corporation. We would have to have an individual's name.
Okay. And then on the sex offender thing, so if a sex offender moves into a neighborhood, long-term rental or purchase, there's notification requirements. And now you're saying that if a sex offender is going to rent for the weekend a property, that would have to be a notice as well, or they would not be allowed to rent.
There wouldn't be a notice. The way the state statute is written is basically they would not be able to rent the short-term rental.
Okay. And none of these regulations affect long-term rentals.
Correct. These are only 30 days or less.
Okay, so if someone has a long-term rental, they're not required to pay a fee, have a license, have liability insurance, have contact information, notify the neighbors or anything, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what about safety issues? So if a motel is built or a bed and breakfast is established, the county does inspections, does it not, for appropriate fire escape concerns, smoke alarms, flammable materials, all of that? Do we do that with motels and with bed and breakfast?
So a motel would be covered under the commercial code, and when it's built, it's got to be built to those regulations. So exiting, sprinklers, fire alarm, lighting, all that stuff is covered under the code. When a house is built, it is built to the International Residential Code. And emergency egress, through a window out of a bedroom. Any of the sleeping rooms have to have that emergency egress. Those kind of requirements are built into the dwelling before they would get a C of O. And that's where the short-term rental is really, it's geared for, a 4 to 6 family member unit, just like you have in your houses. That's what it's really geared for, is those kind of rentals. Now, when we get to people that try to rent it to 45 people, no, the structure is not made for that, and that is one of the ways that we would be able to regulate them, is that structure, that septic system, is not designed to deal with 45 people. They could get a temporary use permit, if they were going to have a wedding or something like that, but there's a whole nother process for that kind of event. So we are trying to regulate these structures down to what they were designed for and not for what some of them are being used for.
Okay. So the short-term rentals to me is equivalent to running kind of like a hotel in a residential neighborhood. You've got a flow of people coming and going all the time, and this home could be something built in 1940 that doesn't have the appropriate size windows. It's a fire trap and all of that. And here, it can be very dangerous to rent something like that, and someone may not even realize the danger that they're in, and they pay $400 a night to stay there, and the place is a fire trap. So I just didn't know if this regulation allowed us to do some kind of safety inspection.
So the way the code is written, that if it was an approved structure in 1940, 50, 60s, and was built and been in continuous use, then there's really not much we can do about it. Okay. Now, the way the ordinance is, or the state statute is written, it says there's a life safety item. We might be able to go in and require that smoke detectors are placed, CO2 detectors are placed. I do not think we could go and require them to replace all their windows to the proper size. But we could regulate some of the safety violations that are in place now that because of the state statute allowing us to deal with life safety items.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Good questions. So that would bring up a question for me though, Jeff, is that with this safety aspect of it, if we put in this ordinance to permit these places to do this, what kind of liability would be put on the county if something was to happen to one of these residents? Or would there be?
Well, it kind of goes to the, so your question, if I understand you, make sure that first, that would the county have some liability if it institutes some kind of safety inspection system for?
Or not? What if we didn't and a place burned down or?
So if the county does not have any system in place and somebody's renting a house on a short-term basis and there's someone injured there, I don't see any liability. But if the county has a program where it has begun to inspect short-term rentals and make sure they're safe before they get a license, and then the county fails to inspect something properly and someone gets a license and someone's hurt, then there's possible liability for failure to follow the county's own regulatory system that's been put in place.
Okay, does that make sense, Steve?
It does, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, we get sued on everything that comes around anyway, but that was a question that I was thinking is if we permit something to be used in this manner, you know, what happens if there's an issue with it? And so that brings up another question for you, Randy, and a lot of these places, you know, they're all different sized, I get it, as far as square footage and whatnot. So if somebody comes in with a 2-bedroom house and wants to permit it for Airbnb or short-term rental, we would actually have a number on occupants that they could rent that to? Is that what I'm getting out of you?
What my understanding is, we would be able to regulate them by the size of their septic system. So if their septic system was built for a 2-bedroom house, which is based on 2 members per bedroom, then yes, you could say that no more than 4 people. Now, under the building code, it's usually around, and I'm just going off of generics here, around 200 to 250 square feet equals an individual in a house. So as you know, most people have 2,000, 2,500 square foot houses. So if you use that table, they're allowed 12. And if that was on a very, a weekend that you had family over and you had 12 people, that's really not an issue. But if you're having 12 people every weekend or during the week, that septic system is not going to be able to work, and it's going to have issues, and then that can be regulated.
Okay, I get that, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here for a minute and say, okay, the septic system can handle so much, but they roll in porta-johns for a 3-day weekend. What then?
We don't allow porta-johns unless you are repairing a existing toilet system or you're building a new one.
Okay,
So they would not be able to do that, especially in a residential neighborhood. So that would be a clear flag that I'm sure the neighbors will be calling us saying, hey, there's 3 RVs, 3 porta-johns, people got tents out in the backyard, so on and so on. So I'm sure the neighbors would notify us pretty quickly.
okay, so I'm gonna throw you another one. So I'm talking about unincorporated areas without any zoning to speak of. How's that gonna work?
So by the state statute, it does not get in, you're not allowed to go by zoning.
Okay,
So as you're talking young, yes, they could be regulated as a short-term rental, not
Okay.
as a zoning code, but as a short-term rental.
cool. Questions, more questions?
Yeah,
Tim?
just one more if I may, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
have at it.
James, you said on this ordinance, there's our room for 2 employees if we pass some type of ordinance?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Homer, I guess that from the analysis that's been done, that the fees would generate enough to support administration of this with up to 2 FTEs. Not necessarily that we have to have 2 FTEs, but that the fees would support enough to have that much staff to administer short-term rentals in Gila County.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at, that if we do come up with some type of ordinance, then we are responsible for, or could be responsible for 2 more full-time employees.
We could potentially hire up to 2 FTEs to administer the program, yes.
Thank you.
Steve, more questions?
Maybe a
This
comment.
is gonna be
So,
a big topic.
my district is Pine and Strawberry, and so over half of the short-term rentals are in my district alone. And so it's a concern, and I do get people to ask me about it. So my opinion is that I would favor the neighbors more than the owners, and that I think we should take an all-of-the-above approach when it comes to regulating the short-term rentals. I also believe that probably well into the 90 percentile, the owners and the usage of them are all good. It's just the few that spoil it for everyone else. That's probably true with almost everything. But I do believe we need to have an all of the above approach here. Whatever the county can institute, we should. That's all I have.
So I don't disagree with that either. It's unfortunate that because of a handful of misbehaving people, we're at this point, but that's where we are, and it's not fair to put that load on the neighbors at all. And so we've heard everything under the sun on issues, and we all know them, and we know that there's an issue, and we also know it's only gonna get worse. So I don't disagree with what Supervisor Christensen said. I think we are in a time when we do have to address it. We just have to address it right and get it right when we do it. And I think that's gonna be a pretty entailed process, is what I would say. And if we need 1 or we need 2 enforcement, we go with what we need. And I know that, we start bumping our FTE ceilings and stuff like that. We're always worried about positions and what we can afford and everything. So that would bring up another question for me. So with the money we would get from this, Randy, and we know that there's 1,200 in Gila County, which I'm almost sure isn't all of them. So what kind of what kind of money you think we're gonna see? What are we gonna have to throw in there from the general fund or whatever else? Maybe you,
Well, if we charge the 250 that's allowed, I mean, the simple math would be that 250 times 1,200. I don't have the calculator on me, but that's a large number.
Like Supervisor Christian said, about
Yeah, about-
300,000, there would be no amount that we would have to kick in from the general fund. The fees generated would cover all the cost of administering this. So there'd be no additional general fund
we hope.
monies.
That would be our intention going into it.
I
Well-
guess, Mr. Chairman, that it certainly wouldn't be any more than we are now in trying to deal with the situations and the circumstances that are presenting themselves from short-term rentals.
Go ahead.
I'm just concerned about, okay, let's put on 2 employees, let's put on 5, let's implement them, but then we put the burden of ourselves in policing this without employees because we're understaffed now with a lot of our, our goings on, and I just worry about putting more regulations, and I'm not saying that we don't need them, it's being able to staff and keep up with the ordinances that we accept. Because right now, as far as code enforcement, I know we're way behind on some of the things that are going on with code enforcement. So we add more, you know, I mean, are we gonna get the employees to uphold this? I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be done. I do believe it needs to be done, but also too, I'm weighing the burden of putting more on and not being able to have the employees.
I agree with you. You know, our folks are pretty well swamped right now, especially in Randy's department. And, there's no way, I would like to see more stacked on them. You know, so I think for me, from my standpoint is when we go forward with this, we really need to be looking at that and be willing to jump in there and put that extra person or persons on board to keep from maxing these folks out, because they're busy enough. James, you got something?
Randy may disagree, but I think that the situation is already here. It's already in Gila County. And the problems that are here, whether there's an ordinance or regulation, is not going to affect the situations, circumstances. This gives us an opportunity to be able to identify who and where short-term rentals are, to be able to administer that, be able to have good records of who they are, so that we can have an easier path to follow up and working with these short-term rentals, to be able to address and hold people accountable. And that's what these staff would be to organize that information, to know who and where the short-term rentals are. And then as far as administering all that, I think we have to deal with that already now.
Okay, so administering, I think I'm lost a little bit. What do you mean by administering?
To be able to have all of these short-term rentals registered, and then to ensure that the things that Randy has laid out, that we have all those things in line of the insurance, the contact information, and things that would enable us to address things easier. Whereas now we have it might be a short-term rental, but somebody comes in, has a group of 40 in a 2-bedroom house. We don't know who to call. We don't know who to say, you know, you're not compliant with things. But if we have all that information, it makes it easier to enforce.
Yeah,
Rather
okay.
than now, we've got a group of 40 showing up and we don't know who to call, we don't know who to address, we don't know. So it's having that structure of who the good people are and who the potential bad actors are if they're not complying with what Randy has laid out. But
Okay.
if there's somebody with 40 shows up already, we have to deal with it as it is without having that information.
So Randy, you said earlier that the assessor's office has somewhat of a list on these?
No, they have a list of 1,900 renter accounts,
Okay,
but those could be long-term hotel motel. Those are not the short, they have not, we haven't required short-term to do this. Doesn't mean they're not supposed to have, but because they haven't been required to, the odds of compliance are pretty small.
so so have we been dealing with compliance on some of this already out of your office?
Not under the short-term rentals. We deal with junk, trash, and debris, those kind of issues, and we go to the hearing officer. So there have been fines, but not that is related strictly to an Airbnb or a short-term rental. Because we don't regulate them, we just deal with the owner. Where moving forward, we would be able to show, okay, this guy's been fined once. The state says I can fine him $500, where now we might fine $100. The state says the second time that individual comes up, it's $1,000. And the third time is $3,500. And then we can revoke their license for 12 months. So it's a way of dealing with the bad actors, where currently we don't have a process for that now.
Okay, so if this is to happen, then your office, you guys would be developing a database with all these different rentals in that database for the permitting and the tracking and all that.
Correct. We would be issuing the permits, and then that automatically goes into our permitting program, and we would be able to pull a report out, give it to the sheriff's office, so at least they know if they're going for a noise complaint or whatever issues they run into, that this is a Airbnb, and they can track that they've been out there 4 times for noise, where currently now it's just a house that has a noise complaint.
Go ahead.
One more. Okay, you say that the good actors, the bad actors. How many places in Gila County are being rented that are registered through the assessor's office as permanent residences? There's people that have permanent residences in a couple different cities, and they may rent one out on weekends, but it is registered with the assessors as a permanent residence. And so who's going to police that? And if they are renting those out on weekends, we're not even going to know if we go off the assessors on whether they're rentals or not. And if we show up and people are there, I mean, are we going to do we have any authority to make those people register as a rental rather than a residential?
I cannot answer for the assessors. What I can tell you is they are planning in the next year to 2 of modifying their system so that short-term rentals can be split out from all renters.
Okay, but how do they actually know? I mean, I've had rental properties, I've got residential properties, and so, you know, they send me a little deal of, is it a rental property? Is it your primary residence? And so they're depending upon me to be an honest person and let them know whether I have a rental property or it's my permanent residence. And so I think until we can get some of that solved, some of our bad actors aren't even registered as rental properties.
Correct, and that is very possible. But remember, if we move forward with this requirement, for them to advertise, they are going to have to show that they have a permit for that, or they won't be able to advertise in a lot of the publications.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
I don't think I have any more to report. There are complaint sections on the Airbnb and Verbo sites, I know. And Verbo and Airbnb, as their business, do not want complaints against their listings. So they police their people as well. So I just think the county needs to have something in place, like Randy is saying. We don't have any way to act on anything unless, we don't have the information, we don't have any licensing, nothing. So we need to have that. And I don't believe it'll be a huge burden on the county as far as enforcement or doing, there's gonna be initially a lot of paperwork, but after that, I think I don't know that we're gonna need to hire more people. We probably already need more people. We probably already need another code enforcement person anyway, but
More than likely.
yeah.
So, okay, I'm gonna back up a little bit with you, Randy, and we're gonna go back to permitting these places. If there's there's a house in the middle of a neighborhood that wants to do this, I think you said earlier that they or we would be the ones that just would notify the neighbors that this is gonna take place. Is that the case?
Actually, it says that the owners are to notify them. We may be involved so that we're sure that they're all notified. And in the state statute, it does not say whether it's a letter, I believe, or if it's in person. So this could cause some neighborhood contact, which is a good thing. But in the process, we may, just like we're kind of changing our zoning process, that we send out the mailings. So that way we're sure when and how they went out, where we may add that into the process that they provide, the self-addressed envelopes and stuff, and we send it out and verify who is being notified. Like I said, it's all adjacent property owners and directly across the street.
Okay, so this is something that I can see from us as a county, an issue, is because there'll be some neighborhoods that are not going to want whatever it is in there. Whether they're good short-term rentals or whatever. I mean, we have those fights occasionally already on different things. And so my question would be, if the neighborhood or properties are adjacent to that, what would we see as far as any oppositions to a short-term rental? Are we gonna see petitions coming to us, or are we gonna see them filing suit against us for allowing it? What do you think, Randy?
Currently, there's no contact and there's nothing stopping anyone from being a short-term rental.
I know that, but as soon as we open this gate, there might be.
So under the state statute, there is no process that allows us to deny the short-term rental permit that we may issue due to the neighborhood being against it. That could come down the line, but that currently is not in the state statute or the new House bill. So they're just being notified, told what's going on. If it's someone who's not in the state, that gives extra people keeping an eye on it. But there's nothing under state statute that says we can deny a permit based on the neighborhood response.
Okay, thank you. You good with that one, Jeff?
He's right.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I guess that Randy's charge based on this is just an introductory discussion of this, and that we will continue to pursue this to try to put something, that we will put something together that will be brought to you as a board for further consideration.
So if you guys draft out or outline a plan going forward, are you gonna do that in a regular meeting, or are we gonna hold another work session so we can discuss it?
I had been leaning to previously that we need to have another work session, that we get some draft ordinances and things that we can have a continued discussion, pull apart anything that Randy and his team put together for this. So I was leaning towards another work session.
Ideas on that, guys?
That sounds good, because there's a lot of, after our discussion today, as far as I'm concerned, there are some loose ends that we need to tie up before something comes to say it, for us to say, okay, that's good. You know, I think there's some loose ends that need to be covered in an ordinance that we need to go over again, to be sure of who's policing and how's policing, and who's, you know, how it's going to be done through the court system or through the hearing officer, or how are we gonna regulate, whatever ordinance that we do come up with, and staff it. I think all of that needs to be considered.
Yeah, I
And
agree
we
with that.
also,
Let's have another work session. I agree with that.
Randy?
we had also, staff had talked about wanting to go out to the public prior to the ordinance, you know, bringing back an ordinance, just to get other input, so that when we come back to you, if the decision or correction or the way we're going is to do this, that we'd want to go to the public, get the input, and so when we come back to you, we could have all of that ahead of time.
The more information we can have in front of us, Randy, as you well know, the better off we are, for sure.
Okay.
So, do we have a person there that wanted to talk on this a little bit?
I believe so, sir. I think there might be two.
Well, I was gonna wait till call the public, but I'm gonna take them now. But there was a presentation sent to us that we're not gonna be able to watch today. All three supervisors, we have copies of it. But if they'd like to spend 3 minutes and just give us their idea or input, I'd be willing to take it now.
Sir?
Good morning. If you just state your name and your address, that'd be great, please.
Good morning. My name is Donna Meinertz. I reside at 2951 North Vista Way in Whispering Pines, Arizona. Can I put this on top of here?
So you were the one that provided the PowerPoint this morning?
Yes, I did, and I apologize that it's not 100% beautiful. I was on one PowerPoint program and it got switched to a different one. And when I looked at what was actually sent, and I don't know what's going to come up because that's going to be a different version. So it's not 100% pretty, and I apologize for that.
Oh, no apologies needed. We each have copies of that PowerPoint, but because of our work session and the topics we got, we're gonna pass up that PowerPoint this morning and just
All
give
right.
you the opportunity to speak to us for 3 minutes, and then we'll each review that PowerPoint and be ready for the next meeting on this. So,
Excellent.
go ahead.
Okay, well, I really want to thank you for your time to let us have the opportunity to tell our story. Okay, I got to get the emotion out of this thing, right? Thank you for listening to all of the issues, and I want to thank Randy and his staff for the hard work they've already put into this. I've never officially met him. I saw him this morning. I appreciate the information that he provided already. It sounds like a lot of our concerns are already being addressed, which is awesome, because for almost 27 years, or about 27 years ago, we bought our house. We moved our family to the peace and tranquility of Whispering Pines. We raised our 3 children there. They all graduated from Payson High School. We planned on retiring from there, but that has all changed with these Airbnbs. It has become, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say Airbnbs. I need to get used to saying vacation short-term rentals. They have totally changed our life, and it's been miserable. It's been party central one day after the next. It never stops. There's advertisements for one of the rentals that's adjacent to our property, across the street from our property. We have hot water for enough hot water for 14 adults to take showers. Our capacity isn't there for that. We're getting brown water, so now we want to take a shower, do our dishes, do our laundry. There's too much of an impact on our systems. So on the slide presentation, I could go over it more I can summarize some of it, but kind of one of the main slides that I'd like to address today is slide 20, and that is just some suggestions for making these rentals more tolerable, because I understand with the state they're here to stay. So I think the key takeaway for me is the limited occupancy. If we can get these down to what these homes, the limits to what these homes are really designed for, like Randy brought up, that would take care of a lot of the problems with the strain on our resources, the noise, the traffic, the, more ruts in the gravel road, the brown water, the bandwidth going away because everybody's got their cell phones and laptops and everything. The other thing is, so I'm going to go over this real quick with you, this slide. I did provide a copy of what Scottsdale, they spent a ton of time working on their ordinance, and I loved a lot of the things that they presented in it, and so I did provide a copy of that to you as well. And a lot of the issues Randy is addressing are also in that. The slides 34 to 36, I do have in the PowerPoint presentation, the slides for the notice are in a different order because Scottsdale's needs and issues are different than those of us who live in the country. So I kind of was trying to highlight some of those items that pertain more to the situations as I see it throughout Gila County. But back to this slide 20, the limited occupancy, Arizona law states 2-person per bedroom. Scottsdale adopted 1 to 6 adults, a single family. I don't know quite how you get 6 adults in a single family, and then the children. I think this would reduce the noise, extra strain on resources. Then it should only be registered guests that are allowed to occupy the residence. So single family can be there, but they can't invite all of their friends and have all their parties. They want their parties. How about they do it at their houses, at their residence, not come and make our life really miserable. Only registered guests allowed to occupy the residence. We are really concerned about safety in our neighborhood right now after the 2 homicides that have not been solved yet. We don't know if that has anything to do with this, but the problem is with the short-term rentals. What used to be private for us has become Grand Central Station. People can see what we have. They can, we're more vulnerable now. We're more open to crime. And the slides that are in the beginning of our presentation address a lot of the things that we have had to deal with over the last few years. And it really has truly been unbearable. You're being woken up in the middle of the night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with all these loud noises. So I would suggest no outdoor speakers, radios, televisions, car radios, or other devices that amplify the sound. We have some people that come up, they are the single families with their children. It's wonderful that they can enjoy the woods and have the opportunity. We don't oppose that. We oppose Party Central because that is what has really been horrible for us. And then to have the enforceable consequences. Because you can make all the rules you want, but if you don't have the enforcement there, we've all wasted our time. So I did a quick calculation, the $250 annual fee, 1,200 rentals, and I bet when it comes down to it, you're going to end up with a lot more than that. That's $300,000, so that will definitely help toward getting your code enforcement officer helping, because I know this is going to cost extra resources. I come from government finance, and so dollars are near and dear to my heart. And so I very much appreciate your time, what you're doing. I understand you have another work session. We gave you a lot of information. I think I've pretty much touched on the big issues. The other thing would be trash, and that on slides 30 and 31. Scottsdale does an amazing job of putting some rules out for that as well. So we have, at our home, we live there full time. We have one trash receptacle. We put it out the morning of the trash delivery, and as soon as the garbage man leaves, the garbage can goes away. These rentals, everyone that's around our property has 2 garbage cans that sit in front of the house on the curb line. There's no curbs, so on gravel line, 24/7. They are over full, the lids won't close, so then you have wildlife, the ravens, the raccoons, and if we get bears in the area, trash everywhere. So it's constantly blowing throughout our neighborhood, littering our neighborhood, making it look really disgusting. So what Scottsdale recommended is no earlier than 6 o'clock the night before is when trash cans get put out to gravel side, curbside, and by sundown the night of the trash service, the cans get put away so they're out of sight. And that would help a lot. And then, and maybe some of those places need to have larger dumpsters, but, we don't want to be looking at, drive down the road and all you see is a bunch of garbage cans lined up, which they have a lot of very colorful colors. So that, and then, like I said, I think that covers, do we have anything else that you can think of, any that, my husband is here as well. Oh, what's that? Okay. He'd like to come up when I'm done just to kind of say a few things that I have not. So thank you
Okay.
so very much for your consideration and your time.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Randy, do you have a copy of her PowerPoint? If not, you can get one from her maybe. Or we'll send it to you, Randy, either way.
Yeah, I got copied on that. I've also got copies of Payson's, Coconino's. We've got copies of a lot of the other jurisdictions. Like she said, Scottsdale has different issues and different requirements. Cities are different than counties and what we can enforce and not enforce.
Thank you, Randy. So let's go ahead and listen to your husband. If Mark's got something to say there, let us know who you are, Mark.
Yeah, my name's Mark Meinertz. I live at 2951 North Vista Way. And that was my wife that was speaking prior. What it boils down to, gentlemen, is this problem's not going to go away and it's going to get worse. We've got to have regulations and we've got to have enforcement for those regulations. The state already has the statutes in place. So the main thing that would be helpful for us is that, number one, some kind of a registration number for each one of these vacation rentals, a number that we as residents could see and report that violation to or that house to. So in other words, the two down from the end of the street from us, they're parties all the time, but we have to call the sheriff and we don't like to burden the law enforcement with this kind of thing. But if each thing had if there was some kind of an assignment number for each rental so that a resident could call and report that number, and then the other part of that would be on your end, it would be like a hotline or a report number or a number that you could call and report that residence for this violation. Then your code enforcement people would have a record on that for bad actors, and we have a couple of really bad actors on our street. But there needs to be enforcement. And then the other part is paying for this thing, which you're going to have employees that are, going to address the problem, because that's been the situation. You complain. You complain to the county, you go to the sheriff's department, they're coming out, they don't need to be wasting time coming out for a lot of this stuff that's going on, but they do. And a lot of times we just have kind of given up in calling, because sometimes the sheriff's response time can be an hour, hour and a half. They'll come by and go, hey, we didn't hear anything, we didn't see anything anymore. But we have seen it all, and we've had it all happen out there by both these residences. The one down from us is it's probably about 980 square feet, maybe on the single floor. There is a basement. I've counted 35 people. There's been 10, 15 cars parked out there. There's usually an average of 20 people in a house. They party all night. Sometimes you get some good ones, but there's a lot of bad actors when it comes to that house. The one down from them is right next to them then. It's a large home. That one too has large parties. Both of these feature more commercial. So they'll have, like, for instance, conferences or businesses come there. They'll come with vans, driving in with vans full of people. And it's just the kind of a drunkard, they're just drinking all night and partying. There is criminal action, criminal things that take place, firearms, they're shooting on the property and so forth, which is illegal. that's a sheriff's department thing, which I've had to report, because we've had them taking out pistols and shooting in the backyard. And one guy had a .22 rifle and about a 6-year-old kid, and he set up cans in the driveway and was shooting them. And I had to talk to him and go, hey, there's neighbors right down the other side of you. He had no concept of what a firearm is or anything. It's like he's shooting a BB gun. We've seen everything and experienced it all, and it's really probably every other week is a party there at either one of the places, and it's really been bad. But it's mainly accountability for those people that are renting out those parcels. They have to be held accountable. What Randy stated has everything in place. The statutes are there. It's a matter of getting those things into place. And I believe that the people running these businesses need to share the burden of the cost for the added staff that you need to put on. So licensing, the fines that are going to take place, all that should be taking care of that part of it. And then you guys will have to work out the legalities and the liability part. But we've got to regulate this. You guys, we appreciate your help, but something has to be done because it's not going to go away. It's going to get worse, and something's got to be done so that it works for both people. I'm not against people making money and renting out their home, but a house that has got 900 square foot on the main floor with 20 or 30 people in it, and there's been that many in there, and there's large groups all the time, and he advertises that way. He has a tree house. Okay, he built a tree house next to this house. It's, I don't know how big it is. It's actually got 2 stories, and you can get up on the roof, and the thing's probably 20 foot in the air. And, talking to people that have been there, they sleep 14, 15 people in there. Well, my question would be, can that structure even handle that kind of weight and what they're doing? And then having 25, 30 people in a small home like that, even if, there's 900 per square foot, if a fire broke out in there and they have to, egress out of there and get out of that building, it's just a matter of time before some kind of tragedy happens because there's just no accountability for that. And do they have fire extinguishers? Do they have, the smoke alarms, any of that stuff? But it's not meant for that kind of thing, and we need to really get this thing regulated down so that it is, those 6 people in that house or whatever we come to, which is going to make a lot of the problems go away. So anyway, I don't want to take up any more time, but I just wanted to kind of make a few comments on that.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So there was some points made there that we didn't even take in consideration, like the water situation. A lot of our areas are hurting on waters, for our neighbors. And so I see this being pretty in-depth discussion the next go around. Any more thoughts, James?
I guess I would just like to manage expectations of how long this will take to put everything together. As Randy mentioned, doing a public survey and that it's all several months. I don't know if Randy can give a better estimate of when we can come back to the board and have more meat to discuss, but it's several months at least to go through this whole process and put things together.
That's a good point, and right now we're coming on spring, and so their season is gonna start. What do you think, Randy?
I've learned not to answer questions like this. I would agree with Mr. Midlove. If we're wanting to go and deal with the public, get their input, and follow up on all the other jurisdictions what they're doing, I have no problem plagiarizing. So if another jurisdiction that is in the county has already dealt with this, I'll use their stuff. But I do think it's going to take several months to deal with this.
Mr. Chairman, just to manage expectations again, I would not expect that we will have something in place for this summer. This is as you've all noted, very in-depth discussion. There's a lot of moving factors in this, and all of them need to be considered. So it's a long-term process to put this together. The wheels of government sometime.
So Randy, do you have the means available to you to reach out to the public and do all that?
Currently, the staff has said we will do it. My staff has bought in that they'll take on the added load for this first part here, so I'm going to say yes. I'm never going to turn down help. I'll invite the supervisors. They can come in here and what the comments are also. But is it going to happen by July? Probably not.
Okay. James?
Mr. Chairman, if you, brings up a good question or comment, Randy, that if there are additional resources that could provide real help to this, it sounds like this is an important issue for the Board of Supervisors, that we support this in any way possible to do the work that's necessary, the background and all that, that we could certainly have that discussion, Randy. So if you bring something forward of something that will really help and provide a positive outcome of moving forward, then we would certainly consider it.
Thank you.
Tim?
And I will say that Mr. Minlove and Mr. O'Driscoll have been very supportive of my group. And when I come up with a need, they've responded, and I would expect nothing different now.
Thank you, Randy. Tim, do you have thoughts on that?
I'm good.
You're good?
Just reiterate, I do want to thank the miners for coming in. Appreciate them coming in. They speak for hundreds of people, the concerns. And so, as I said before, I'm more concerned about the neighbors than the actual people that are running the short-term rentals, because the impact is there. The impact is to our sheriff's department, impact to the tranquil life that people want to have out in the rural areas. So I think, as I said before, we should do everything legally within the legal realm of what we're capable of doing to manage this issue. So that's why I said all of the above, everything we can do to make this work better.
Okay, thanks, everyone. If there's nothing else, Randy, thank you for all that.
Thanks, sir.
Go home and get well. So, we will move on to 2B, information discussion of Public Works revenues and project updates. Homero, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Supervisor Christensen, and Supervisor Humphrey, good morning. Glad to be here, and thank you for the time that you're gonna allow for this presentation. This is an update. You should not see a whole lot of new material here. We're updating, but we're doing it for the reason of not just sharing information, we're also doing it to prepare ourselves for the budget work that we're gonna be doing for the next fiscal budget. And so we want to make sure that we incorporate your thoughts into the things that we program for the next budget. This is not an all-inclusive list. We took some slides. It's a big package. There's about 25 slides. I can cover the first 4 or 5 of them very quickly. And I'm going to cover actually like 7 or 8 of them, and then Tom Goodman's going to help me with the rest of the presentation. Tom played a key role in many of these things and is working on them every day. So if I could group the things that we're going to talk about in this presentation, it's going to be revenue trends. We're going to look at revenue trends. We're going to look at cost reduction and cost containment because the revenue trends force us to look at those kind of things. And we're going to talk about post-wildfire projects because we had the NRCS projects and the things that we did and are still doing and trying to do for post-wildfire mitigation, okay? And then we're just going to look at the upcoming road projects, if you will, okay? We're going to cover those 4 main components as we go through the different slides. But Chairman, I'd like your permission to just talk about the winter storm warning, if I could.
Go ahead.
Just for a
You
minute,
bet.
okay? So on Sunday, like many other Sundays, a group of our team, actually 16 folks, left their warm homes to go remove snow from the rim country, okay? All around the rim country, we got anywhere from 4 to 12 inches, okay? There were folks from Star Valley and Young Road Yards working on that Sunday. There was 8 of them. From the Star Valley shops, the auto shops, the heavy equipment shops, there were 3 folks present. From the Buckhead Mesa landfill, there was 5. That was almost everybody from the landfill, everybody from the Young Road Yard, everybody from the Star Valley Road Yard. and they were all out, and they removed snow, and they did it without, folks volunteered before they were called, as a matter of fact. Do you need help? And that's the kind of teamwork that we have out there, 16 strong. So now they're preparing for tomorrow, Wednesday, where we're supposed to get anywhere from 8 to 12 inches, maybe more, in the rim country, in many parts of Gila County. Again, they have 16 folks lined up, but in this particular case, they also have people from the sign shop and people from the Tonto Basin that are gonna go help. Again, it's another team effort. They've lined it up. All 4 road yards, I talked to them this morning, are prepared for what's coming forward. And they'll be ready to answer the call. And they're actually excited to work as a team when you talk to them. So, and my appreciation to them, okay? I've got the list of names, but I know that we're gonna have a highlight for our employees at the next board meeting. So instead of reading off the names here, we'll do it at that particular time, okay?
Can I chime in for this just a minute? For the 6 years that I've been in this seat, our road department on holidays, I don't know how many Christmases, New Year's, and whatnot, they've been out there in the middle of that nasty stuff while we're all sitting around enjoying presents and getting full and fat. So I tell you, it's amazing, these folks, and they do it, and they're happy to do it. They don't balk at it. They don't run backwards on it. They jump in there with both feet and get after it. And I think as a county, I'm not sure that we've shown them enough appreciation through my 6 years for what our road department actually does on the ground. That's my 2 cents worth.
I would have to totally agree. I think many holidays, just this year alone, many holidays they've had to report out. And again, they do it, sometimes they start at 3 in the morning. It's just, and often it's on weekends. So they're doing a tremendous job.
And when you say 3 in the morning, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but these folks have bus routes they got to open up in order for those kids to get to school. And that's a lot of why those early mornings, they got to get out there. Those buses are running at 6:30, 6, 7, all in there, and they've got to hit those bus routes before they can even untrack. And these folks don't hesitate. They do it. So thank you, Homero.
Thank you. And thank to our team. So let's look at the slides. Am I supposed to manage it from here? Well, I can just, yeah, I'll notify. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about roads that are maintained using Highway User Revenue Fund, 18-year period. Back in 2006, we received 4.3 million. If we extrapolate what we're receiving this fiscal year, we're going to get about 5.1 million. You can say, well, that's a sizable increase, something less than 20%. Over 18-year time frame, I think the inflation has been 45% over the last 18 years, and we'll see that in a minute. Next slide, please. You'll see a similar trend, high in 2006 where we had the housing boom, low in the middle where we had kind of like a recession, and then building up even through the COVID period. Okay, this is the transportation 1/2 cent excise tax, and this has a big dip in the middle in 2014. The first 20-year period for the 1/2 cent excise tax got to its sunset. It was terminated, and then voters approved a second 20-year period for the 1/2 cent excise tax, but we share 50% of that 1/2 cent with the cities and towns going forward, starting with 2015. And you can see that on the year 2014, 2015, the bar dips, but not all the way. That year, we received, the first 6 months, we received the full 1/2 cent excise tax, and then the second 6 months of that fiscal year, we received just 50% of that 1/2 cent excise tax. But the numbers, as you go through time, 3.1 million back in 2006 and 2.1 million this current year. So that's basically a loss of $1 million, okay? The next one is the vehicle license tax. Vehicle license tax shows very similar to HERF. high in 2006. I picked 2006 to take us back to a high number, then a dip with the recession, and then a little differently the last couple of years. It looks like it reached a peak last year. Maybe less vehicles are being sold this year than the previous year. But you see that we end the year with 1.3 million, and we started 2006 with something like $1.1 million. So then if you put them all together on the next slide, this is all three of them. And you can see that we're almost back to where we were in 2006. And even though HERF and vehicle license tax saw some increase, the half-cent sales tax erased that, and we're back almost to the same level of about $8.5 million per year, okay? HERF mileage in the meantime has increased. It's gone from 715 miles to 756. So we have more miles to maintain with basically the same amount of money. And I mentioned the annual average inflation has been 2.3% in that time period, for a total of 45% inflation in those 18 years. So for what took $1 to buy back in 2006, now it takes $1.45. And that's even more pronounced for some of the petroleum products. The chip oil that you recently approved for chip seal had a dramatic increase in this last year alone, okay? And I expect the pavement material to also be the same, okay? So, so what do we do when we see that over 18 years you don't get a pay raise, okay? Over an 18-year period, there is no effective pay raise. It's at the same level that it was 18 years ago. One of the important things is that we have a lot of gravel roads in Gila County. Actually, we have the 756 miles that we maintain, 577 are dirt and gravel, okay? And we're going to see some numbers in a minute. So one of the things that this county has been doing is been using material from the Forest Service material pits. And that has been a cost containment effort on the part of the county. And one of the things that we're trying to do is the circles that you see on this chart or have a 10-mile radius. When we first started looking at this chart, we had a larger circle, but we wanted to reduce them, and we wanted to see where else do we need some pits. And the team, as well as the Forest Service, has recommended 3 areas for us. And the areas that you'll see that they're recommending, you'll see with the dotted green circles, you'll see the Raymer pit and the Braddock pit. And then there's one with a blue circle, that would be the 824 pit. And those are pits that are being proposed both by our team and the Forest Service. Right now, one of the first steps into getting these pits to become useful is we need to do an environmental clearance for them. And we're getting ready to go out and find out how much it costs to do the Braddock pit. And we're going to invite the Forest Service to help pay for all of them. But I don't think we're going to wait for them. I think that material, the value of that material, it far exceeds the environmental assessment. And we'll know as soon as we get an estimate of cost for doing that kind of work. And the other thing that we're doing is we're testing all the material that comes from the pits. We're trying to make sure that the material, it will last as long as it should last on a gravel road. If you go to the textbooks, it talks about re-graveling a road every seven years. The traffic and the wind blows away the fines. Once it blows away that clay material that's in the fines, the material doesn't hold anymore. And so it's recommended that you add gravel to a road every 7 years in general. So we're just trying to maximize, make sure that if we need to add something to those materials that we're getting from the pits, that we're getting the material in useful sizes, that it have the right size particles. It's supposed to have anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to the very fine clays and silts in different proportions. We're trying to make sure that if we can help get that to be better material, that we take those actions to do that. And that's what we're trying to do with all our pits.
So question for you, Homero. Who are you using for your soil tests? Did you know we have an NRCS soils guy here in Globe?
We use Western Technologies.
Okay,
They
so
specialize in those kind of things.
did you know we have an NRCS guy here in
No,
Globe?
I know we do.
And that's all he deals with is soils. So I had a really good conversation with him the other day, and they have a quite extensive soil bank. I don't know if it may be worth your time to stop by there and introduce yourself to him. His name's Greg Anderson. And he's right there. If you turn in to go to Arizona Water to the office, right there off the highway, there's a chip place right there on the corner of the building. He's right next to it. It's right up against the bank. And I had no idea this guy was even around. And so I had a really good talk with him, and it may very well be worth your while for information, or might be able to help us in the future. I don't know.
We will visit with him. And I think that's the purpose of having this discussion, is to hear what others have to say. We did start with Western Technologies, but maybe we'll blend the knowledge of both of them and come out with the very best. I think NRCS working with the different federal agencies, they've done soil classifications across the United States, and they probably are using that database. And we'll visit with Greg Anderson.
And they have their own too for the local area. And one of the areas I was concerned with was El Capitan, so he pulled it up, and there's the test sites and everything they'd done. So there's actually Greg Anderson and one other individual in there that wasn't there when I was, and I forget his name, but anyway.
Very good. Thank you. So moving along to the next slide then. So this slide shows the chip seal work that we do, because this is, again, cost containment. On the blue table, you see road miles, HERF-funded road miles, 756 is, I think, what I mentioned earlier. Of the 756 miles, we have 179 miles that are paved, okay? And so if you wanted to chip seal and extend the life of a paved road, you would chip seal it. You'd crack seal it, you'd chip seal it. Crack seal it every three to 5 years, chip seal it every 5 to 10 years. For us to be chip sealing our paved roads every 10 years, we would have to pave about 18 miles of roads every year, okay? This spring, we're targeting 10 miles to chip seal 10 miles of roads. Some of them are paved roads, some of them have been chipped in the past, double chip seal. So we're gonna do 10 miles this spring, but we need to make sure that we're looking at doing 15 to 20 miles of paved roads every year, to try to chip seal them every more or less every 10 years. And so that's what we're going to be targeting going forward. Again, I wanted to show the Forest Service. When I sit down with the Forest Service last time, we had a meeting with them. I mentioned the 758 miles that we maintain that are in Forest Service. I'm going to keep repeating that over and over again till everybody knows that number. But that's a sizable amount of road miles that we undertake with the Forest Service. I think we need to ask ourselves, do we need all of them as time goes on, number one? And I think we can answer that question with traffic counts and other things. But there was an effort to add miles in recent years, or in years past, I should say. And we just need to ask, were those decisions valid at that point in time? Today, if it's a HERF road, we do our best to try to maintain that road, whether it's in a primitive road fashion or if it's in a paved road fashion. Okay, but we make every effort to maintain the 756 miles that we have today. Any questions on this chart?
There are, but I'll let Tim start it if he's got any questions.
No, I'm gonna leave that alone, go ahead.
Steve?
Yeah, nothing right now. Thank you.
Okay, so when we talk about pavement, pavement's expensive. So I remember sitting down and having conversations with Danny Savage when he was still in Star Valley about double chipping the road and how it would last. You know, and I look at the 288, the state highway going to Young on the south end. That, I believe, and Brent can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's no more than a chip on that. So has that been thought about or kicked around? Have you thought about that, Homer, on some of these roads where, I don't know, I know there's concern about plowing snow off of a chipped road and stuff like that of tearing it up and whatnot, but what do you think?
Double chip seal road with a good base, can last 5, 6, 7 years. But if the base is not any good, I've seen double chip seal roads unravel next year. Pothole and they start to fall apart. So you need a good base, whether you do a double chip seal road or a paved road. The problem with double chip seal roads is later on you want to pave the road. But normally when we double chip seal a road, we don't engineer the road. We treat the chip seal as a surface treatment, not as a pavement, okay? In theory, if you want to pave a road, you ought to have it engineered. You ought to have all the road geometries figured out for that road. Every curve, every dip, the road geometry should be figured out so that our liability is satisfied that we are not allowing a higher speed on a road that's really not meant for a higher speed. And so we just need to be careful that if we put down a double chip seal road today, that we don't try to pave it tomorrow without also doing the engineering. And so I think we need to look at our road ordinances, and we need to make time to do that, because we need to ask ourselves, when is it that we take a gravel road and double chip seal it? When should we do that, or when should we pave it, for that matter, okay? And to make a smart decision based on traffic counts, based on the maintenance costs that we have, that we undertake for our roads. Because there is a crossover point where you say a gravel road should be paved. You know, if you're blading that road every week and you're putting material on it every 2 years because the wind and the traffic is blowing that fine dust away, then you're probably better off paving that road. And there is a threshold for that you'll find in textbooks. And it's based on traffic count. Okay, and so we need to ask ourselves, when do we start chip sealing our gravel roads? When do we pave our chip seal roads? And so we need an ordinance that helps us, I think, with that. We've also had roads where we accept roads as county dirt roads that meet really no standard for a road that in the past. They don't have the proper width, they don't have the proper drainage, and so we end up with a road that we can barely maintain. Okay. And so when the neighborhood says, how about doing something more for this road? Well, the mere fact that we didn't get the right type of easement, or that they encroached on the easement over time, makes it almost impossible for us to make even if we wanted to, it makes it very difficult for us to make an improvement. The same thing goes for drainage. I went to a road up in Pine the other day, and they've got this road that points right at a house, and the two ditches that aren't really complete, but where they end, they're pointing right at this residential structure. And if we were to take over that road, we would end up with the liability of that drainage. So I think we need to have a process that guides us in the acceptance of road, to encourage neighborhoods. If you want us to accept that road, you should bring us to this particular standard. Otherwise, it comes in as a primitive road and it stays as a primitive road forever. But we want to approach the board with an outline of what we need to do with our road ordinances, road maintenance ordinances.
You guys have anything you want to say about that?
Well, I'd just like to say that when things are subdivided, I think better drainage and roads could be provided prior to subdividing, because that's what a lot of our issues are, is things were subdivided and just roads were built. Well, they were private roads and there wasn't adequate drainage, there wasn't adequate width, there wasn't a lot of things done, there was just roads so people could subdivide properties. And I think that as a county, when we're looking at people doing subdivisions, we need to be more strict on what they're doing for roads for our future if we do need to take them over at some point in time. That, like, some of these roads will never be anything other than a primitive road, because they can't be brought up to any specific code for us to be able to maintain and accept the liability of.
Steve?
I'm good right now, thanks.
So Homer, back to pits. I want to back up to the pits. And so reaching out to the forest is good, and obviously we have to have their coordination in this to pull that out of the hat. But to get them to do the NEPA and the environmental part of all that, you're looking a long ways down the road. And so are you guys thinking that just to go ahead and contract that and have it done through a contract? Because if you are, my suggestion would be is we expand our list of pits and put them all in the same package. If we're gonna go to that, because we're gonna spend some money on it if we do it, and we might as well get the most bang as we can for it. What are you thinking, Homer?
That's a good point. Actually, we hadn't come across to that idea yet. We were going to ask for a cost for one, but when we ask for a cost for one, we ought to ask for the alternative, which is a cost for all three. I think that's a very valid thing that we ought to investigate. What's the cost for all three?
I agree, and I'm not sure you wanna stop at three. I think if there's three more out there that you wanna add, you ought to add it, because, once they do it for one, they might as well be doing it for six. So, if that, in that process, knowing that there may be one or two that'll fall out, which it may happen anyway, but I think we have the money to do stuff like this, and this is probably our one shot of ever getting something like that done. And I don't know about your guys' districts, but I know mine relies heavily on these pits. And the fact that we're having to try and truck that for miles makes it to where we don't do it. And so we have pits that are actually setting there adjacent to the roads that we need them used on. But I've been here for 6 years, and we looked at pits my very first year that we still haven't. Raymer Pit's one of them on that list. Well, there's more than Raymer Pit in that area. So I'm just saying and throwing it out there on the table that if we're gonna be looking at this, we really need to look at it and get as much mileage out of it as we can. My thoughts. Tim?
Just to add 2 cents worth, okay, pits with the Forest Service, I guess is what we're looking at. How about private property pits? There's people out there with property that does have good material. And I don't know if, I remember when I used to haul tons of granite off of Pete Sanford's place, which he started out with a mountain and ended up with a pretty good flat spot. Are there still property owners that would be willing to get rid of one of their mountains to help us with a pit within range of some of these roads that we're maintaining? Or is there some kind of ordinance that will not allow us or take liability of us hauling off private property? But that's just if we're looking at pits. I'm thinking perhaps maybe there could be some private property owners that would be willing to end up with some flat property to help us with maintaining our roads.
We can certainly look at that. And but we need to find out who, we need to find an area where we may need a pit, that we don't have a Forest Service pit, that there may be a private property that would be willing to entertain that.
In the 6-shooter road, there's 66 acres set in there of hillside. That person might be willing to help us at the end of 6-shooter Canyon, which is, I'm just something to bring up, and if we're looking at options, that may be one.
Steve?
Yeah, I just was gonna say, not really talking about the pit, but this 45% inflation, Homero. So I did some quick math. In order to break even with 2006, we would have to have $12,500,000. So we're short 3.8 million when it comes to inflation. People don't realize how much inflation eats. So we're way down on our revenue. Yeah.
And so the idea was to share that information with the pits, because the pits actually are a revenue source. When I looked at this, I looked at the pits and I said, that's a revenue source for us effectively. It provides us material, or whether it's in the Forest Service or whether it's from a private property. Private property, we just need to investigate the competitive nature that we would enter with people that are in that type of business, because I've had an experience with that once. And we just need to make sure that we're okay with that. With the Forest Service, it's an agreement that we have with them for the maintenance of the roads. We get the material from them, in essence. And so but we need to explore that, because I think we need to, if we can get material, it still costs us some money to either crush the material or get them, or extract the material from the pit. It costs us some money, but it's not the same amount of money as paying for the material. So we need to explore all those options, because to your point, Supervisor Christensen, it's a revenue that helps make up for that shortfall.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to some degree, the message that's here is, yeah, inflation's running way high, but we're not weakening on our jobs. We're still going on with what we need to do. So hopefully that's what, you know, that's so people can understand that and see. So, thank you, Homer.
Okay. Next slide, please. I'm still on the cost containment, cost reduction part of the presentation, okay? So here is a county drone program, and both GIS and Survey, Tom Holman and Scott Warren, work to produce documents for us that we would ordinarily in the past have to pay for. And one of the examples is that is showing that the Buckhead Mesa landfill in 2015 was contracted out to get them to give us some topo maps. It cost us $3,600 to do that. Then recently in 2020, we did it with the drone, Tom Holman and Scott Warren working together. We ended up doing that in a shorter amount of time, 3 days, and in 1/3 of that cost, $1,300. And there's 30 flights that have been done, projects that have been completed using drones, and they cover a whole vast of different things up there. Almost every project that we envision doing, some improvement for a road, some improvement of type that changes the earthen material, the drone is a suitable device to use to get us the first set of maps. Some of these maps we can turn over to contractors, and they can use them in the work that they do, reducing the cost of the contract. So this is another example of a cost reduction, I'll call this, okay? And I bring this up because that's what we're gonna need. We're gonna need to continue to chase things on how to do things more effectively, to do more with the same. And as folks don't like to hear that, like you're gonna do more with less. No, we're gonna try to do more with the same thing that we have. We're gonna try to find ways of doing more. The rest of the county is looking for these kind of things. A great example of that is the digitization. When you put things, digitize them, they're easier to find. They're also easier for the public to use. And so we're interested in participating in that as well, so that if somebody has a question on, is this a HERF road, that they can look up that answer for themselves instead of us having to stop what we're doing, pick up the phone and answer that question for them. But the county is also pursuing other things like this, and I just wanted to show those 3 examples of the things that we're doing. Questions?
Questions? We're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Post-fire, I think, Tom, are these coming up to your slides? Yes, okay. All right.
Thank you, Homero. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to make this presentation. I'd like to kind of get specific on some of the projects that we're working on this year and over the next couple years, and then also tell you what we did last year, some of the projects that we were working on. Okay, so on this slide, these are the Telegraph Fire and the Bush Fire projects that we had the cooperative agreements with NRCS. The cooperative agreements were 220 days. We signed the agreements on February 1st of 2022, and these are calendar days, so that expired September 8th of 2022. So for the Telegraph, we had 4 projects. We had Bloody Tank Wash. We did get that one completed, both design and construction. We completed that one last November. 6 Shooter Canyon, Ice House Canyon, and Russell Gulch. We did not start construction. We did get 100% design completed. We have design, so we have plans, we have specifications, and we have estimates. And that was on Six Shooter, Ice House, and Russell, and that was Telegraph Fire. For the bush fire, we had Landing Wash, Sycamore Creek, and Butcher Hook Wash. Again, we got all three of those designed, 100% design. We have plans, specifications, and estimates for those three. So those projects, all of those were completely designed, and unfortunately, the EWP, the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, the funds expired at the 220 days. We have had several conversations with NRCS. We did ask them if we could get time extensions, and we got very short time extensions, so we were not able to start construction on those projects. But what we are doing is looking at a different program within RCS, and we're working with them on that right now. It's the, what you see is WFPO. That's Watershed Flood Prevention Operations Program. It's a much longer program. It requires a lot more thought and design and work. These are 5 to 7 year programs, unfortunately. But that's how NRCS is built. They have the 220-day program, and then they have the 5 to 7 year program. They don't have anything in between, unfortunately. So that covers telegraph and bushfire. Again, we're working with NRCS as best as we can. We're also exploring other options with Department of Forestry and Fire Management to see if they would be willing to help us move some of these along faster.
Tom, I have a question for you, just to stop a minute, but
Yes.
you had the design and everything done for these, so the work that you've completed on the design, is that gonna be adequate for the WFPO part of it now, or are you gonna do more?
We'll have to do more. That requires that we look at different options. One of them is a do-nothing option, but they will also want additional. Under EWP, we just had the one design. WFPO will require additional designs.
Mr. Chair. if
Go
I
ahead,
may,
Tim.
Where would that money for initial design come from, being that we've already spent money for 100% design that's not sufficient? Where's the funding gonna come from if we do reach for these 5 to 7 years for the design of that funding? Where's that money gonna come from?
That'll come from NRCS. So the WFPO program is, NRCS will fund that program, and they will actually help us quite a bit to get through the process because it is such an involved process.
But there'll be a small amount of match to that funding.
As far as everything I've heard is that it's 100% on NRCS for the
Thank-
WFPO program.
Thank you.
Yes. So the, down at the bottom in the green, these are some other projects we're working on. Walnut Canyon Box Culvert, that's being funded through DIFM. That one is, again, we have 100% design with plans, specifications, and an estimate. We're ready to take this one to advertisement in April to get a contractor. It's going to be a 100 working day project, and we hope to start work. We had hoped to start and get it done before the monsoon, but it looks like we're going to probably hold off and get started right after the monsoon this year, and then we'll wrap it up by the end of the year.
So I had a question, and this may not be for you, Tom, maybe for Homero, but how much money does DIFM have left? Because I heard through the rumor mill that the extra money that they had allocated has been put on hold now for some of this. Does anybody know?
Chairman, no, I don't know. I think we should ask them for money and find out if they have any.
Okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Tom, sorry.
Sure, you bet. And yes, sir, so I welcome input and suggestions at any time. Yeah, feel free to stop me. So Walnut Canyon, yeah, so we're gonna get that one, we'll get it built this year, for sure. Russell Road, we're going to submit to Department of Forestry and Fire Management for this project. And we're looking at designing something that'll, for a 10-year event. And we're gonna submit all this to DIFM to see if they will help us fund this. And I'll talk a little bit more about this one as we move on.
Tom, before you, if you don't mind putting us back on that slide, can I just make a
Sure.
couple of comments? So, our experience with NRCS, you know, they granted us about $10 million of monies to do work in 220 days. And that didn't go as we had planned. We asked them for extensions. They said, don't worry, we'll get you an extension. And in fact, they gave us some small extensions, but nowhere near what was needed to design and build $10 million worth of projects, okay? So now we got the WFPO project. The WFPO project has 4 phases to it. One of them is a feasibility. So you determine whether the benefits exceed the cost of the project. The cost for these projects as were initially the conceptual idea versus the final cost that we got from J.E. Fuller was significantly higher, okay? In other words, we submitted for $12 million worth of projects. The project came in at something like $20 million in total. So the feasibility for all these projects that you see up there, the first thing that NRCS is going to come back with is this one is not feasible, this one's feasible, this one. They're going to determine which are feasible and which are not. If we don't cross the feasibility part, then this project, all these projects that were all NRCS projects, are in limbo at that point in time. Then it's up to us. If they're not feasible to NRCS, we may ask ourselves, we may end up with the same determination ourselves. They're not feasible for us either. If the costs exceed the benefits, they may not be. So if you look at like Sycamore Creek, it offers a small community some benefit. And the question is the cost of that project going to exceed the cost of the benefit? And then if not, then we have to rethink what we're doing with all of these. And in the next couple of slides, Tom is going to walk you through how we're rethinking at least a couple of them, okay? And we've looked at the ones that are more urgent, that we feel are more urgent. And so I just wanted you to follow along and know that NRCS is not necessarily the answer to the 7 projects that you see up here.
Thanks, Homero. Next slide. Okay, so we'll just go through some of the projects that I want to talk about. So the first one here is the Walnut Canyon, that one I just mentioned. And you see the picture on the left. That's currently what it looks like out there from the floods. The road's been closed for quite a while. The culverts are gone. And on the right, it just shows that small section down there in Tonto Basin. But we have the design completed. That was done by Kimley Horn. That was finished up fall of last year. And so we're looking, again, starting construction after the monsoon of this year. And then, so it's 100 working days. So we'll wrap it up at the end of this year. And we're estimating construction cost will be about $350,000, and again, that's DIFM funded. Okay, so Russell Gulch, this is one I wanted to, and this is what Homero was mentioning. This is one that was NRCS funded, and we were looking at a $15.7 million project just for Russell Gulch. We do have a shovel-ready design, but as Homero mentioned, the WFPO program, first step is we got to go back and do a feasibility study. So that's kind of what that's showing there on the left. So we broke it down. This is really our high priority because of the hospital, because of the number of residents that would be impacted if a flood did happen through Russell Gulch. So we broke it down into, okay, if we can only get a certain amount of money, what would be our priority? And our priority would be starting at the downstream end, which would be down by Cobra Valley Hospital, which is on the right, that's at the bottom. If we could only get a certain amount of money, we'd start with that project. We estimate that one would be the most expensive at about $7.5 million. And then our second priority would be up around the Little Acres area. And then our lowest priority would be the upstream of that, Upper Russell Gulch. Okay, let me talk a little bit about Russell Road. Reconstruction, this has been closed for quite a while, as everyone knows. And on the left, it's showing the easements that we would need. And one thing we discovered is this is not all on the Tonto National Forest. There are some private easements that we would have to get. So that's what we're kind of showing there on the left. We have the private, we do have the, okay, so we do have all the easements. It just kind of shows that there are private and also on the forest. So it's about 1.8 miles of roadway was damaged. And that's about 2,200 linear feet. And we have J.E. Fuller has been working with us on this one, giving us some preliminary design information. And so we're looking at about, initially we're talking about concrete walls 10 feet high, measured from the bottom stream. But this would be very expensive. We're looking at about $20 million. So recently we went back to Fuller and said, let's look at something cheaper, say in the $5 million range. So we've actually going to be meeting with them this week, but we're going to be looking at something much less expensive like gabion baskets. So one thing I want to talk about on Russell Road is some of the impacts that this road being closed. And let's go to the next slide, see if we got it on. Yeah, okay, so here we go. So the picture on the right, if you see the blue, that's if there was an accident down near the DeMarco's Italian restaurant, all the people that are inside that blue polygon would not be able to get to the hospital. If the road was closed, they would not have access to the hospital at that point. And that's 8,360 individuals that would be impacted. So we see this as a high priority to get this project completed and get the road reopened for that reason and for a lot of other reasons. The slide on the left, it just shows the area in red that we would, is where the project would take place.
On Russell Road, Tom and Chairman, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Couple of points on Russell Road. It's not only shovel-ready, but we also had J. Fuller do a feasibility study for us, and the feasibility study came back positive. In other words, that the benefits would exceed the cost. And the reason that the benefits exceed the cost is because this the Russell Gulch drainage, okay? The reason that it's positive is because it supports keeping the hospital open on a 100-year event. And it supports SRP and APS substations that are out there from being flooded. And that, together with the neighborhoods, then it gave us a net positive on the feasibility study. So that's a project that we could pursue because it is shovel-ready. We have confidence that there's value in what we're doing, and that we could do on the Russell Gulch drainage. On Russell Road, we asked J.E. Fuller, and it's almost not fair to them, we asked them to give us a conceptual cost and a conceptual design. And they looked at it from their discs, okay? And gave us a quick response that said, you're gonna need 10-foot walls for 2,200 feet, and you're gonna need 20-foot walls that for 2,100 feet and 1.8 miles of road, and for a 100-year event, making sure that we have scour erosion, certain depth, 7 feet depth of the walls. They came up with $20 million. So we went back to them and we said, look, we want to open up Russell Road. And what we said is, let's not look at a 100-year event. Let's look at a 10-year event. What design could you come up with? Could it be gabion baskets? What could we drop material at a 2-to-1 slope, a 3-to-1 slope? We know that it might go into the creek, so we got to be careful that we stay away from waters of the U.S. to the extent that we don't obstruct flow. But we've asked them to go back, and we use numbers like 5 and 10 million with them, okay? But it's really not the 5 and 10 million that's guiding them. It's a 10-year event that's going to guide them. So they're going to try to, maybe the scour protection doesn't have to be as deep. Maybe the wall doesn't have to be as high. Maybe they could step back. And that's what we meant by lowering the cost of Russell Road. 20 million seems to be a lot of money for $1.8 million of road reconstruction, until you stand out on that cliff and you see that it washed out 10 feet and it's 20 foot down, okay? And then that you have to assure the traveling public that something doesn't happen on that road as they drive by. And so there's a lot of guardrails and things like that. So the $20 million, it sounds like a lot of money. We're going to find something, perhaps with J.E. Fuller's help, we'll find some middle ground somewhere, how to open up that road. And I just wanted to share those kind of things.
Thank you, Homer.
Mr. Chair, if I
ahead.
may. Okay, if we can get costs down middle of the road, not 20 mil, what's a funding source that we're looking at, and what is our odds or possibilities of accepting that, of being able to afford or accept that funding?
I think immediately we ought to ask DFM for the money. That would be the first step that I would suggest. They can say yes or no, right? If they say no, we figure out where we go to next. But I think Russell Road, one of the things that we were trying to show is not only are the folks that are impacted that, yeah, they're inconvenienced by having to travel around today to get to the groceries. But there's also that polygon that Tom shared that says that between the Marco restaurant and the U-Haul place, if something happens to US 60 there, 8,000 people get stranded. They don't have a way to travel to the medical help. They don't have to they can't travel in a westerly direction beyond the Marco. If something were to happen at the Marco and U-Haul. And if you travel that area, when they told me that, I kind of didn't believe it, so I had to go look at it. And when you go look at it, you'll see, common sense, there's hills here without roads on them. And there's no way that the public could actually go in a westerly direction to the regional medical center. Okay, they would be stranded on this side. And so that kind of like added fuel to the fire of saying this is an important thing for us to fix. Supervisor Humphrey always points out to me that the Forest Service should have an interest in this because the people use Russell Road to go explore the canals. And so we've mentioned that to the Forest Service, but I think we need to keep adding pressure to them that says, where's your dime? What's your contribution? And then we need to look for if all those things fail, I think we need to look for, extend our search for sources of funding, perhaps to the federal government.
Okay.
This slide shows some of what we completed last year in 2022. So I'll just go down the list. First one, Bloody Tanks Wash. So we got that one completed, designed and constructed. And that was completed last November. Russell Gulch, 6-shooter, Ice House Canyon, Sycamore Creek, Landing Wash, Butcher Hook, those are all NRCS projects. Those were all 100% designed. They're shovel ready. We just need to find funding, get them advertised, and get a contractor out there. And we are working on that with looking at different options. Walnut Springs Boulevard, I've mentioned, so we have complete design, and we'll get that one built this year. Tonto Creek Bridge. We started construction September 1st was notice to proceed to Ames. We had the groundbreaking October 4th. Work's been going very well. We did have some delays, but I don't know if it's been reported, but the biological opinion was reissued from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service a couple weeks ago. We just got the updated Army Corps of Engineers permit. They were waiting on the biological opinion. That just came in yesterday, so that was the other piece of information that we needed to get updated. The only thing left is ADOT has to update the NEPA memo, and that's really just a signature from the department head there at ADOT, and then Ames can get in there and start clearing their the brush. They can start building gabion baskets, and so they should be able to get back to work this week or next at the latest is what I'm anticipating on that. And then Golden Hills and Main Street, right here in Globe, those have been awarded to Wheelcon. We had the pre-construction and partnering workshop a couple weeks ago, and they're going to be mobilizing on the project March 13th, and that'll be 100 working days, so right at early July is when that project will be finished. Okay, so this is what we're looking at we've got the next 3 years. You can see there the columns starting in 2023 and 2024, 2025. Just want to give an update on some of the projects we're looking at. So Main Street and Golden Hill, I just mentioned, that was awarded. That's $1.846 million, and again, that'll be finished up in July. Walnut Springs Boulevard, we estimate bids will come in around $382,000. That's what our designer estimated. So we'll get that one constructed this year. Roosevelt Lake Resort, this is a high priority project for us. We've been working on this one for a long, long time. We've got 100% design. We just got to get those water mains lowered. Homero's been really helping me to get this utility company to do what they need to do, and I appreciate Homero's help. So I think maybe we're starting to see some movement from the water company. I hope we are, but it's a real high priority for us. Young Road, we just got about $500,000 from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Tonto National Forest, to update the environmental assessment. We just put together a scope of work. We sent that back to the Forest Service, just kind of have them look at it before we go out to bid to get some prices for this EA update. It's going to be extensive. It's going to take some time, and we're estimating $400,000 to $500,000 for this update.
Mr. Chair, if I
Go
go
ahead.
just a second, I'm going to ask you to back up for a minute, because on the Roosevelt Lake Resort Stagecoach, I understand that it is a priority. The question is we're still dealing with the water mains and the water company with the water mains. Are we looking at different options of being able to continue with that project, or are we just beating our head against one option and stagnant there?
Yeah, Homero and I have had several conversations about this, and if we've got a couple of different things. If we can't get the water company, then we are going to look at other options for a redesign. We would have to get back with Dibble. Dibble did the initial design, but we have talked about that as a possibility.
Thank you.
We would like to get them to do the right thing and lower the water mains, and I'm hopeful that that's what'll happen. That'll give us the best project. It's pretty flat out there, and we've got to get this water pushed to the north down into that big ditch. And I think that's our best option is the designs we have now, but we are talking about a possible redesign.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Gila. This is going to be about 1.06 miles. There's currently a double chip seal out there that's falling apart. So what we want to do is take up that double chip seal, rework the subgrade, put down a good base material, and then pave it, probably 3 inches of AC on top of the base material. We're getting ready to contact a design firm to give us a design on that, and then we would like to get it built this summer, or start this summer, have it finished by the end of this year.
And that's the second half of this project, right? Because what, a couple of years ago, we did the first half of
Correct.
this?
Yeah.
And then through COVID and delays and things of that nature, so this is the second half of an ongoing project.
It is.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
this
you.
one will be just over a mile. I think it's 1.06 miles. And we've set aside, looks like about 1.15 million for this project. We figured about it. Paving's running $1 million a mile, so that's what we're anticipating. Control Road, we have several projects on Control Road. 2 of them are HSIP-funded projects. ADOT is administering those. We just recently had the kickoff meetings for design, and so that's Control Road, and then the one right below it, Houston Mesa. Those are the 2 projects, and then we've got a third Control Road project that we're doing in-house with our funds. But we would like to get those designed this year, and then construction would start in the spring of next year on those 3 projects. Wallaman Road is, we still have to work out a scope of work for this project, and we're looking at 2024 for scoping and design. That'd be about 120,000, and then we'll construct that in 2025. Round Valley, Gibson Ranch, kind of the same thing. We still need to do some scoping on that. And scoping will be in 2024, and then we'll construct it in 2025. So that's kind of a look at what we want to do the next 2 to 3 years.
Tom, if you could, tell me on Control Road, those 3 projects, what exactly are they?
So they're safety improvement projects, and the 2 ones being administered by ADOT is through the HSIP program. So it had to meet certain parameters to be safety improvements. So what we're looking at on the Control Road is we're looking at, we're going to do a double chip seal, and then we're going to try to do centerline rumble strips and shoulder rumble strips or edge line rumble strips. And then we're also looking at improving the signing. So that's the first Control Road project. Houston Mesa, we're looking at adding paved shoulders for about 4 to 5 miles. That one is quite a bit more in cost, but we want to add paved shoulders. I believe they're 5-foot paved shoulders, and then we want to put rumble strips on those shoulders as well. And then signing and possibly centerline rumble strips on that one as well. So those are safety-related projects. And then our in-house project on Control Road is in the Whispering Pines area. That's just over a mile in length. We're working very closely with the Tonto National Forest on this one. And they've given us $1.5 million. They want us to take charge of design and construction management, which we are doing now. And that is 100% Tonto National Forest funds. And that's primarily, there's a lot of logging activity, a lot of heavy logging trucks. So that will be taking the existing dirt road, engineering it, and then putting down pavement, probably 3 inches of AC on maybe 6 inches of AB base material. And we'll have to probably rework the subgrade on that one as well.
And that was right there in Whispering Pines area, a lot of that, if I remember right, because of dust control and stuff like
Yes.
that too.
And that was the Forest Service. that was primarily, they were thinking dust control.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Sure. So this kind of breaks them down a little bit more. Go back one more. Okay, yeah, so this just kind of goes through the projects. Gila, we've talked about. There's Control Road. Houston Mesa, that's the one where we're gonna put in the 5-foot wide paved shoulders, center line and shoulder rumble strips, and add curve warning signs. And Control Road, Whispering Pines, that's the one we also just talked about. That's funding through the Tonto National Forest, $1.5 million. And Tunnel Creek Bridge, again, that one is, obviously, everybody knows it's under construction. I think we've gotten through the biological opinion update. We got through that. We should be getting Ames fully back to work here next week, is my hope. And that's it. Any questions? Be glad to answer them.
Tim, you got any more questions?
No, I thank you. I pretty much stopped you as we were going through to ask questions. I appreciate the information and the answers to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Tom and Homero. I have no questions. Lots of projects, lots of things going on. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm good as well. You know, you guys have a really busy list of stuff here, so as usual.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All. Thank you, Homero. Okay.
Hey, can we break for 5 minutes?
Do you need a break?
Yeah, I need a break.
Time is it? It's 12:15. All right, well, let's come back at 12:20. Missy? We're good? We're good on YouTube, so 2C, information discussion regarding revised policy number BOS FIN-113 procurement. James?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you can see, we've got an enormous amount of projects that we've got going on. Want to keep moving, make sure that they are moving forward. And in looking at that, wanted to look at if there was any ways that we could perhaps become more efficient, more effective in how our contracts are administered and how we go through the process of getting all of this work done. In looking at our procurement code, came to, through a few recommendations that we might have that we could consider to amend our procurement code to help us be more efficient and to move projects along to the greatest extent possible. A couple of things that I wanted to point out, and you may have copies of the procurement code on page 1 of 36. Informal solicitations, it talked about that we have a $5,000 to $100,000, a minimum of 3 documented written quotes required, but then also specified that it says may use county credit card as payment method. So that means that somebody could go, if we've got potentially informal solicitations, which are oral or written quotes, that we could prop down a credit card and pay for those. I think that was put in during COVID to make that more efficient. We are outside of the emergency for COVID, so I would recommend eliminating that may use county credit card as payment method. I just don't think it's in the policy, necessary to be included in the policy. So that's the first recommendation, is to eliminate that reference, as you can see there. Then on page 6 of 36, there's just a couple of things of typos that were included on that. They were capitalized 100,000. That's just a lower case lettering for that. So very minimal typographical error. On page 9 of 36 is the meat of what we wanted to look at. In 11A, the wording was that contract awards shall be made by the county manager. So this is looking at contracts that were between $50 or $0 to $50,000. That shall means that the county manager had to approve all contracts. And I don't think that's appropriate. That the Board of Supervisors is the legislative body that mandates how monies are spent. All contracts are approved by the Gila County Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors, however, can delegate some of that. So wanted to eliminate that the awards may be made by the county manager. And with our procurement, that we previously noted that we have contracts that we can do informal solicitations up to $100,000, wanted to change the county manager's level of authorization or ability to sign contracts to that same level of informal quotes. So that the wording would be awards may be made by the county manager for contracts of $100,000 or less. And to amend that wording to state just that. And then finally, on the next page, it talks about the report and putting these reports into the board of in the consent agenda to make that each month a report will be compiled by the finance department of contracts $100,000 or less signed by the county manager. Talk to Missy about how we can present this, that we can make it more searchable to make sure contracts are not going under the radar, that we'll present them and bring them to the board of any of these contracts, and that we can change the way that those are reported so that they can be searchable, and that make sure all contracts, that we're not letting anything go under the radar that's not transparent and readily available. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, some minor changes, but we feel it could be some changes that will help us to ensure things are more efficient, that we can keep these projects going on. Some of these contracts we want to look at, it can reduce the time of processing all of this by 2 to 4 weeks, I would estimate.
So before I get to you guys, I'm gonna chime in first. And so this actually came up, I probably instigated it, I guess, this little deal. And the reason I did is because of the Pleasant Valley Veterans Retreat Center. We've been messing with that thing for 3 years, trying to get things done and off the ground, and we spin our wheels, and we spin our wheels, and we spin our wheels some more. We have state law that we have to follow. Jessica's here to make sure we do that. But policy is just that, and as a board, we can work with it. And then when here more recently, when David Marshall proposed that $1 million coming to the county for the Pleasant Valley Veterans Retreat, I'm sitting back in my chair thinking, you know, it's March, and what have we done? We've painted a building and we've put some flooring down to the tune of less than $50,000. We're working on things, but we still sit here and we spin our wheels. So I actually sat down with James and said, we're gonna have money that's gonna hit the county, and we have a big spotlight on the county now because of this Veterans Center, that people are gonna wanna see things done. They want to see that this thing gets open, and so folks can use it. And here we are. We still haven't really gotten to off first base. And so what about procurement or way of doing business? What is there that we need to look at? What are we doing wrong, I guess, was my main question. Because obviously something is going wrong here. So that kind of started the discussion. I remember when I first took this seat, you know, and everything, and under 50,000 came up, and I was pretty much under the mindset, well, the board needs to see every dollar and be a part of it. You know, as I've come along in my position and understood more, way more than I did when I got in it, you know, there's a trust level that we have to have with a manager and our people. And when I look at these projects like this, us three sat here and voted on spending $1 million for the fairgrounds, $1 million for the Veterans Center, and $1 million for the sheriff's office. And I got to thinking about that. And I have total confidence in our department heads and James to get these things done. But yet here we sat. And I got thinking, you know what? There's some of this stuff that to me seems like we can do and streamline it a little easier and get it moving without have to constantly come back to us for approvals. I guess I'm pretty simple-minded, but it's like I kind of look at this and say, okay, for any of those 3 projects, when you run out of $1 million, come back and talk to us. You know what we need to do, you know where we need to be, and so let's get some things done. And so that's kind of where this conversation started. And so with that, I got to thinking more. It's horrible when you have a lot of windshield time, I'm telling you right now. So, but we have ARPA money that's sitting out there in a pot that we have to have spent or obligated by 24. Folks, we're pretty deep into 23 already, and that's going quick. And so we have more money that's coming down from the LATCF funds, the public land funds. We have $12 million sitting there that's coming down on that too. And we have things to do. We have projects. We have priorities. But all of this seems to get bogged up because of us. Bogged down. And so when I don't understand everything there is about our policy procurement. I'm going to just step out there and say that right now. I've looked at it, I read it, and then I have to ask questions. And eventually it's going to be to you. But anyway, I just asked James, what can we do to do this? So if we went from $50,000 to $100,000 for James and said, okay, you could sign up to $100,000 on some of these contracts that may come back or agreements, whatever it is, that saves probably 3 to 5 weeks of having to come back around through us again, with it coming out on a report that says, hey, you know, Here's what I did, here's where I signed, here's where you're at. I like the reports. You know, I look at the under 50 reports, and I like that. But it just has come to my attention that if we don't do something to make it to where we can move as a county and do our projects and get things done, we're gonna stay bogged down. And with that, I'll open it up to you two. Tim, I'll start with you.
Go ahead, I'll finish up last.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Well, so, thank you. Yeah, I don't really have a problem with changing the number. Is the number right, though? I mean, is that something that you decided would be the right number, 100,000?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Christensen, we are allowed by state law to, it's recommended at a lower amount by state statute. However, the state statutes do say that we can be consistent with what the state procurement office is. State procurement office is $100,000, so by state law, we are allowed to have up to the $100,000.
Okay,
And so we're being consistent with state law.
okay, all right, that's helpful. And the only concern I would have, because I don't really object to it, I don't think that we're losing transparency or control. But the constituents need to know that by changing this number, we're not putting their tax dollars at a greater risk, or that one person makes all the decisions and et cetera. So, and if we do make this change and discover that it's not advantageous, then we can change it back again. Okay, thanks.
Tim?
Well, Supervisor Klein, I respect you very much in your opinions, but I disagree on this one.
Perfectly fair.
And the reason being is because I have said millions of times that I have time for work sessions. Very, very seldom, or we have gone backwards, it seems to me, on work sessions. So the delay in time in us completing projects is because someone from staff cannot spend $100,000. To me, I disagree with.
Okay,
Because I'll have a work session twice a week if we need to get projects going forward. But I want to know the projects, I want to know more about the projects before I just open it up to say, okay, here's $6.5 million, go spend it and just let me know how you did after the fact. I don't agree with that, and I would like the attorney's input on us doing changes of this nature.
so you have a very valid point. Very valid, and that was discussed too. Because as whoever the chair is, either one of us three, you know, when things are going on, we can always call a special meeting. You know, it has to be posted 24 hours, I think. I mean, that is always that is up to us as chair. And so that was discussed. We talked about that. And that would actually eliminate time as well. It would. I'm up for suggestions. I'm not saying one way or another. That's why I wanted this as a work session today and asked James to put this together so we can discuss it. The one thing I can tell you guys for certainty, if we continue down the path that we're going, we're gonna be running the risk of turning some money back. And that is something that I, for one, am not gonna be happy about if we do. And so, this was a way, in a work session, just like you, Tim, you know, we can discuss this finally out and come up with some ideas of how this can work. So, Jessica?
Yes, Chairman, members, supervisors. My first recommendation would be to hire a consultant to review the procurement policy. I do see that it was adopted back in 2018. I know there were minor revisions. Specifically, one Supervisor Christensen was talking about possibly giving favoritism to local bidders when there's an equal bid on the table. So that was modified. So when it says revised, sometimes that could insinuate that the entire agreement was reviewed and revised, and it has not been. So I just wanted to explain that to you, because I am not sure where the original procurement policy came from. I'm not sure if it was from finance. I spoke with Jeff and he was unaware. But it would be good to have a consultant review the entire policy to make sure that all of the sections are up to speed and consistent. In regard to the change,
Mr. Chairman, could I comment on that?
Sure.
The Auditor General, the State of Arizona Office of the Auditor General has reviewed the procurement code. They do not have issues with it. And with response to this specific issue, the Auditor General has no issue and said that it is compliant with state law and that there is no problem in doing this and proceeding with this. So, again, hiring a consultant, that this was gone through in 2018. There's been minor changes, minor amendments, minor edits. It was gone through in excruciating detail in 2018. And as with any policy or any ordinances, there are minor things that are going to come up that will need to be changed. I don't know. To me, to take that step back when we went through all of that process in 2018, 3, 4, 5 years ago, is an unnecessary exercise in time and expense for the county. So, I'm sorry.
Jessica, go ahead.
yes. In reference to the specific change from the 50,000 to the 100,000 that may comply with the procurement policy, are any of these agreements IGAs?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jessica, will continue to follow all procurement policies. And so as far as the contract, the county attorney's office reviews those so that they are compliant as to form, that they are legal as to form. So that doesn't change any of the internal controls that we have that exist for contracts. It doesn't change any of the opportunities that the county attorney's office would have to review and make sure that they are all what they need to be for Gila County as far as are they legal. So.
Okay, Chairman, member supervisors, yes, because that's where I was going, because by statute for IGAs, it would be required to be reviewed by the attorney and approved as to form. So I just wanted to make sure that you intend to also include the county attorney's office in those agreements so that it could be complied with. That requirement is not specifically there for contracts with contractors when they're not a governmental entity, but it is there for IGAs.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jessica, this is not, it's simply changing an amount. And whether it's an arbitrary amount of $50,000 or $100,000, which up to the point that is allowable by state law, to me, it's, we could take it down to nothing, that everything has to come to the board. That is certainly the board's prerogative to make that judgment call. Just depends on what control, if you have faith that the internal controls that we've established as county through the finance department, if those are in place, if they're operating as they are, it doesn't matter whether it's $1,000 or $100,000. Those controls are in place to catch anything that there could be that's improper. But absolutely, and that's why over $100,000, we do sealed bids. Those all would have to come back to the board to award a sealed bid. This is just simply changing an amount, and it's not changing anything else that any of the procedural or policy that exists other than an amount.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, lastly, I just wanted to touch base with the comment that you made, Chairman, in reference to the ARPA funds. Now, I did review a request as far as moving forward with certain contracts in regard to those ARPA funds. I went back to look at the meeting agenda and the motion that was made on that day. I also looked at the presentation, and in my opinion, the presentation was a bit vague. And I wasn't 100% certain that every single supervisor was on board with the details of each contract. For instance,
Mr. Chairman, this is really not relevant to what we're discussing here. It is a discussion of doing wastewater in the Pleasant Valley site, but it doesn't apply to this approval or the amount that we're discussing here.
Wow, that's a first.
Well, that's why we get the county attorneys involved, is for those comments. And Ms. Sabelli has made those comments, and we take those to heart and follow the county attorney's guidance and direction for us.
yes, excuse me, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, it did seem that there was some confusion, but we could follow up with that later in regard to the ARPA funds.
That would work perfectly, Jessica.
Great,
Right after this meeting would be perfectly fine.
perfect for me.
Okay. Tim, you want to shoot me some thoughts?
I have lots of thoughts, Mr. Chair. And when we look at, I've heard efficiency, moving along faster, doing things better, doing things faster. To me, handing off more responsibility is not the answer. Looking at the full picture, I believe, is a better answer. As a businessman, having management is one thing, and I believe in management, I believe in trusting management, but if there's issues come up, sometimes giving management more responsibility, it is not necessarily helping the greater cause. I think that there's more ways to move along better than handing off more responsibility. Because like I say, I have a lot of time for work sessions. And when I look at the overall picture, Mr. Chair, Mr. Minlove, I would like very much at some point in time to have a work session, because we have had a lot of change in upper management. We have gone from a county manager to an assistant county manager to a deputy county manager to a county manager and an assistant county manager. We have had people retire. We have had clerk of the board retire. We have had public works director retire. We have had a lot of management changes recently. I would like to have a work session of where our management is at this point, and the tree of how it breaks down from the Board of Supervisors to the Assistant County Manager to who, to where are those responsibilities, to see if we cannot create a better environment instead of give away more responsibility that I feel is my responsibility as we go forward with these projects, to not give away responsibility, but to take on more responsibility and understand where my responsibility stands and where each department's responsibility stands, and can we become more efficient as a working gear, because we've had a lot of changes and I don't understand where everything's at. And until I know where everything's at and how everything's going, I'm not ready to hand over my responsibilities to just say, here, sign whatever. Let's make it 250,000 instead of 100,000. Let's just give it all away and sit at our desk and look at paperwork that comes across our desk on where it went.
So,
I would like a work session on where we're going before I would approve handing off more responsibility.
so let me correct something, Tim. My whole goal isn't what you're kind of insinuating. I think I miscommunicated something to you. Okay, I'm gonna give you a good example. Here just real recently, we're dealing with cabinets in the vet center. We're looking at July, the end of July, 1st of August, before we can get these cabinets because of different things, because of the process and whatnot we're going through there. And so it's kind of like, to me, it's like, you as a builder, if you walk in someplace and you're building a $1 million home, are you gonna wait till the end of July to get these cabinets? I doubt your customer would be your customer for very long if you do something like this. There's $75,000 worth of cabinets, let's say. So one of the processes would be is we can go out there and shop around for other places. We can do other things. They could come in, whoever, you might build them, whoever it is. If we have this agreement set up where he could sign more than 50,000 up to 100, then he can buy those cabinets, put them on the deal. This is what I'm trying to show you.
Well, what I'm saying, Mr. Chair, is if you would like to hand over that responsibility for that particular project, I'm fine. But I'm not for all projects.
Well, and that's
to
an
sign over that responsibility.
And that's an option.
Yes,
We can
if
do things like that.
I believe me, I understand if the veterans retreat, that would benefit. I'm with you 100% on a particular project. But not every project to just have that rain.
And then like what you stated earlier about having more meetings, we can do that. If, for instance, something comes back in a bid form that we have to deal with right now to get done, you, me, Steve, we can call a special meeting with that, with the appropriate time so that we can address it and get that addressed. We can do that. We have that. We haven't really ever done it. You know, we haven't. From the time that me and you've been on the board, the only special meetings really we have are for emergency meetings for the most part, from what I remember. So we have that ability, you know. What I'm trying to say here, maybe I'm not getting it clear, is I'm using this project up there because it's a county project, okay? But it's in my back door. It's a county project. The spotlight is on us for this project. We have people looking at this project, people that are wanting to give us a lot of money for this project. How can we get to a position that we can move on this project? That in a nutshell is what I'm asking. Jessica?
Chairman, members of the board, you certainly have more than one option here. The change from the 50,000 to the 100,000, it is authorized through statute. The board does have the ability to designate their authority over the county manager. They can certainly do that. As far as this specific project, another option would be to have an agenda item and make a motion to authorize the county manager or the chairman to sign off on projects up to a certain amount. And it seems as though if you have that consensus where everybody is on board, they know what the project is, and they're okay with the discrepancies in possibly contracting. Is it gonna be white cabinets, blue cabinets, what have you? If that's covered, then you can certainly move forward with a motion, have the board approve the authorization over to chairman or the county manager to sign those agreements.
And that would help.
Yeah, I'm good for a particular project,
Steve?
just not on all projects.
Okay, so my thoughts are that there is at least a perceived problem that needs a solution. And the perception is you have a problem and you have a solution for it, and this is the solution. And I don't have a problem with giving, say, the manager more latitude. I don't believe that that means necessarily that we're giving up our responsibility. It's giving you more latitude on contracts as far as a number goes. And if we don't like it, we can always come back and say, that didn't work, let's do something else. So I guess I'm less worried about maybe the way it will go, because we can always reverse it. I'm willing to say, is it worth the experiment? Is it worth the try? And I personally think it is. I completely respect, though, Supervisor Humphrey's concerns about it. I just don't share them at that same level, so.
Then let's try them on one particular project instead of across the board.
I'll be the guinea pig, trust me, I'm good with it. If we can get something on paper, but understand something, guys. Please, this isn't a Pleasant Valley project. This is a Gila County project. If this project fails, it's Gila County. It isn't Pleasant Valley. And that's the way I look at all of my big projects, and Lord knows we've had plenty in District 3. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that in order for our county to succeed on what we're trying to do here, we need to work on some processes that's gonna work with us. And it's more than conceived or perceived, Steve. It is. This is an issue that we've been talking about for, I think, right about the time Joseph came on board with us, our facilities guy. And we have not gained but a half a step ahead on anything we started doing on this. I don't know how you got things done at the fairgrounds. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I don't know how that came to be. There was some money spent there and it looks good and it's on its way, cool deal. That has not been the case on this site. And that becomes my frustration as a whole. And I'm glad, because when you look at our projects, I don't look at them as individually district projects. They're all county projects. So I'm always glad for a win. I don't care where it is. But I can see us having a real big heartburn over this if it doesn't happen. Tim?
I'm with you 1,000,000% that we need to move forward to the vet center. And how things got done at the fairgrounds is every project was brought to the board and approved by the board. What projects from the Young project have been brought to the board for us to approve?
So on that particular question, the projects that we're having the most issues with, it isn't like saying, okay, Steve, as a contractor, you're gonna do $300,000 worth of work. You're gonna pave this, or you're gonna do this. It's the little projects that add up. It's the little putting them together. It's the, we need a contractor for $60,000 to do these two houses electrically, and we need painting for another $20,000. It's all these little pieces of it. I wished it was as simple as saying, hey, we have one general contractor and here you go, get it done. That's what that would be really, really sweet if we had that, but we don't. And so, and I don't know, I guess maybe that's a downfall of us as a county organization where we can't talk. So there's no way I can tell you what's going on or the
Right.
nightmare that I'm having,
I agree.
you know? And so that's
But-
part of it.
But, okay, I feel for you on not having your project go forward. I'm willing to help in any way I can. I think the vet center needs to go forward. And I'm willing to help in any way I have, and I've voted for it in everything that comes before us.
absolutely.
And I will continue. And like I say, I would give whoever the authority to sign whatever they need to for your project to go forward. I think that's extremely important to the county. But like I say, even the fairgrounds or whatever project may come up, I think it should come to the board. I'm not willing to even give up my fairgrounds project to say, okay, up to $100,000, go spend it. I'm not willing to do that for that particular project, but I am willing to do it for the vet center, you bet, because I think it needs all the help it can, and I think you need to get some staff working with you and for you to get that going forward, 100%.
So that's what we're trying to do here is kind of untie their hands from behind their back, totally. And
Good
so,
luck.
that's why we're discussing this. That's what's good about work sessions. And so I know there's still hoops that has to go through you and everything else, and I'm not wanting to go to jail over this, okay? Let me just cut to the chase. I just want to get it to where we can move. And so if we want to do something like put it for the vet center, let's try it. That's fine. But the other part of this, and this is what I spoke of earlier, is we still have a ton of money sitting out there on the sidelines that's gonna have to be spent. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I've been 3 years on this, working, me and staff and everybody else working to get where we are today. We'll be turning that money back, or a good chunk of it, if we're not careful.
Woody, I think you make a very valid point, and I use the word perception. I understand it is a real thing. I get that. But when we start getting bids back for the sheriff's department or the courts or any of the other projects we kind of have planned, I can see where it's going to be difficult to have the project move forward in a timely way if each bid or each amount over $50,000 has to come before the board. And there's, like you're saying, a 2-week, maybe 3-week, maybe 4 weeks. I've got projects that are scheduled to come and discuss at March 28th. Okay, and we set those up 2 or 3 weeks ago. So you can see this delay moving forward because of the fact of just getting it scheduled on our agenda and getting it moving. So I can see why it would be a benefit to do what you're asking to be done.
So there is a way we can alleviate some of that with what Tim stated earlier. If we know that there's something like that needs addressed, we can bump up a special meeting to address it and get it done. May not be the next day, it may be 2 days from now or 3 days from now, but we, as chair, whichever one of us three is chair, we can do that. And the only way we can help do that is to go through the manager to ask for that to be done, because I can't talk to you outside this room about anything, or Tim, or vice versa.
Or anyone else.
But that's the way it's designed, and that's
And-
why we have managers.
And I'm willing to have more meetings, work sessions, so we can talk like we are, instead of less and putting things off a month because we're not having work sessions.
Yeah, and so they wouldn't be work sessions, Tim. They would be more or less special meetings with 1 or 2 agenda items after Jessica gets through, for us to approve.
That's fine. I'm up to having more meetings, not less meetings and giving away more responsibility.
We should
That's
have
where
this
I'm at.
discussion 5 years ago before we knew what we were actually doing.
We didn't know if we could.
No.
Because we were, yeah, it's been a learning curve, for sure.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I should just let it go, but I do want to make a comment about having more meetings, special meetings, that the public perception is that we are trying to get something around the public because we're not conducting in what is our annually publicized meeting schedule, that we're putting a bunch of things in between meetings can and has been perceived as a way to skirt the public input.
So
And
that's
scrutiny.
the wrong perception, because, I'm not getting after you. What I'm saying is that I get it the other way. Why does it take you guys so long to do anything? I get that a lot, James, and it's not just from a certain group of people, it's from all elements of people. And to me, it's like, if the law says that we can have a special meeting with the proper notice, like I said, it might be a week down the road, I don't know, but with the proper notice, that's within our ability to do that.
Sure.
I'm
That's-
very much willing to take that heat from the public. I'm in a lot of public meetings, I'm on the radio, somebody wants to say you're having hidden meetings, say, no, I'm not having a lot of meetings to make decisions for you. I'm an elected official, put that on my back.
Well, that's what I get hit with. I don't know about you guys, but I do get hit with that a lot. Why does this drag on so long?
Because we're not having more meetings.
I'm not beating on you, James.
no,
I'm
I'm
just telling you what the deal is.
I'm not taking any of this as a personal attack on me. I'm, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is not about me. This is about a discussion of a policy and a process that we have here at the county. It's not about any one person. It's about how we approach business. And so I welcome the discussion and I welcome your direction as to which direction we go. It's not about me. I'm not wanting to get any, I don't know.
No.
I don't need my ego to be
I
stroked
don't
or
think
anything
any
like
one
that.
of us do, but,
No.
but I'm just saying, I don't disagree with what Tim's saying as far as work sessions either. I'm all about that. Because this is the only way we have a chance to talk is during work sessions. Just like this,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
right.
you know, I couldn't have sat down at Tim's desk and said, hey, Tim, this is what I'm looking at, what do you think? You know, I'd be sending more money to the AG's office for that. So we can't do that, you know, and so this is the only way. But when it comes to things like have to get a contract signed, have to get things moving, yada, 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 I am not beyond asking you to post a special meeting and do it for whatever needs to be done. I mean, if that's what it takes to move, then that's what we need to do.
Chairman,
Yeah.
may I say something, please? The clerk's office will, if you guys get anything on and it's way up in the schedule and we have room, please let us know in the clerk's office. We will pull items forward as fast as possible to make sure that it makes it on any agenda that we have open, even if it's like we haven't finalized yet and it's the next day. Okay, we will make room and we will try our best to make sure that we get items pushed through as fast as possible. Right now, our agendas have been very, very light. People are not putting items in, so they have been very, very small agendas. So we haven't been seeing a whole lot of agenda items. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that we will make sure that we pull items forward as fast as possible to make sure that we get your items forward as fast as possible.
Good with that?
Melissa's been very willing to help things along as fast as we can.
And I, for one, appreciate that because, I don't know, I've already said it. Anything else?
No, just so it's clear that I want to help your project all I can. And I'm willing to sign to give that project whatever limit you would want on that project for Mr. Menlove to sign or whomever he designates to. But like I say, I'm not willing to do that for across the board, but I am to help your project, and I'm willing to have meetings twice a week if that's what we need to go forward, because we do have a lot of projects. We do have a lot of money, but that's not gonna last forever. So I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and let's deal with this per one. And because when we have these work sessions, there's a lot of things that come up, not, just things.
Yeah.
It helps a lot. So I'm very willing to have more meetings.
My only thought is it's James's signature, and then it comes out on the report, so we all three see it. Everybody sees it, and the public included. So it's all transparent.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your input on this. I did not expect quite this deep of a discussion, but it's really good to have this discussion. My intent was to bring this forward to you as a board next Tuesday, March 7th, to have a decision on this. At this point, based on the input we have, since you and I, Mr. Chairman, have had the discussion of presenting this to the board, I will have that discussion as to what that agenda item and what the request will be for next week, if that's all right. And if there's any questions on what I'm going to do, as far as presenting this as an agenda item to vote on for next week, I would appreciate any comments or thoughts you might have.
I'm good. I think I don't know what you got out of all this, but I seen a pretty
I got a
clear
lot.
path. So,
Well,
I have go ahead.
please.
I have a question for you. You said to come next week. Is it coming as it was presented today next week?
No, it'll be as an agenda item to vote on.
I understand. Written as it was presented today?
That's what I was.
That's what you were thinking.
Indicated that I would have a discussion with the chairman as to what that agenda item and what the proposal would be.
With the Veteran Center being the 100,000, not countywide.
I'm not going to commit.
You're gonna
to
have
what-
that too with Supervisor Klein, and then that's coming to us to either say yes or no to.
I'm not going to commit to what the agenda item will say at this point. I have stated that I would visit with the chairman, and that based on our discussion, that an agenda item will be brought forward to the Board of Supervisors to vote on next week.
I don't mind being the.
We can't make decisions here today.
Right, I know that.
And
That's why
so
you're saying that.
That's why I'm saying
Yeah.
I would like to have, this.
I just ask a question.
I know that's perfectly fine. I'm just saying I can't respond that a decision, I've been told how to take an action because a decision can't be made on what that action should be. And so that's why I'm saying I can't promise one way or the other.
So all I would say is I'm perfectly fine with being the experiment.
Thank you very much.
Was
Yeah,
that
Mr.
within
Chairman.
bounds?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that we did discuss a compromise, and so I think that would be a good thing to consider for next week.
Thank you,
And
Steve.
also, I wanted to make just one additional comment that's sort of related, and that's the ARPA money. We need to probably, this is a suggestion that I think that we need to start really becoming pretty proactive on going forward with that we don't leave money behind, and that we do have our planning in place.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I did visit this morning with Mr. O'Driscoll, Joseph, and Dub to discuss these projects and where we're headed on that, and perhaps change how we approach things slightly so that we can ensure that we are moving forward, not just in this matter, but how we are approaching our projects in whole to make sure that they're progressing. So did have that meeting this morning, and we will continue to do that. And more like has been mentioned, I believe you mentioned it, Chairman, of a holistic approach of having somebody come in and say, okay, we need A through Z accomplished, and then putting that as a scope of work, and then we have the whole project, or as much as we can possibly bite off it at a certain given time, to bring to you as a board. So we are going to change how we do other things as well.
So I heard earlier, the thought of maybe a work session for our organizational structure, but also maybe we do need to have another session as well, just to bring us all up to date on these different projects.
Sure.
The fairgrounds, the jail, the vet center, all that, and so we can all get back in tune to it, because it's been a while since we discussed all that, so.
Okay. We can put more regularly scheduled meetings down.
I'm game.
We can have them every week and have them all day, like you've mentioned that you're here, you just will have them all day.
We're kind of working on that today. This might be in the first start of it. So, it's good.
So I'm really under your direction. And if that's not been satisfactory, then we need to change. And we will, based on your.
No, I think, it is apparent, we haven't really sat down as a board and really got caught up on everything that's been going on. We've just been hitting it at the high mark, so I think that would be good, but unless there's anything else, are we good?
Yes, are we gonna continue with what we've been doing lately, or are we just
No,
calling it a day?
no, I'm just getting past this
Okay,
particular
if we're
letter.
getting
No,
past this,
this
I'm
letter.
good. If we're getting past this,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you, James. Any call to the public? I bet we don't have any in Payson, do we?
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody on YouTube? How many did we have? Good deal. And we don't have anyone here, I don't believe. Do we? I don't think so. Okay. I'm gonna start with you, James, so I don't forget you, but do you have any updates?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, later this week, Thursday and Friday, I have a scheduled meeting with the Arizona Local Government Employee Benefit Trust. That is the trust that provides our health insurance and is our annual meeting that we will discuss. It's a bunch of listening to actuaries and all that really fun stuff that even an accountant, so we go through that in very in-depth. The results of this is to what will our health insurance plan be going forward for fiscal year '24, and also what is our rate going to be. And Marin's keeps hitting me up and saying, you can't go over a certain amount or it's going to really mess up our budget. But health insurance, anyway, I just want to let you know that that is taking place. Will be Friday, we'll establish health insurance rates for the county and go forward in the budget. Marin is ready to open up the budget for fiscal '24 and has gotten direction from that. And hopefully I believe by opening of business on Monday or sooner, but by opening of business on Monday, that the budget will be working on '24 for the budget. So as you have continued thoughts and things that you want included in the budget, be sure to address them with Marin or myself.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Tim.
Okay, yeah, I met with Globe and Pinal Cemetery Improvement Group. I think you were at that. I was unable to stay for the whole meeting, but I hope they're making progress because our cemeteries need to be well taken care of. I will be on Kiko on March the 2nd at 9:30 a.m. I'll attend Gila County Community College 20th anniversary in Payson on Friday. I believe that's on Friday, is it not? Okay, yeah. And we'll be on KMOG on Monday the 6th at 9 a.m. I haven't been up there for a while, and so I'm going to go up and be on KMOG. And also I have a 1 o'clock appointment today, and it's almost 1:20 with Robert Jock from TRSD and James Minlove. And I have invited Assistant County Manager Michael O'Driscoll for his input from Health Department and things of that nature that he has been with on for so long. And so, and moving forward, Mr. Chair, as I said earlier, I would like very much to have a work session on the structure of the changes and where we're going with the changes that have been made in our management and how we're going to go forward with things and responsibility and stuff. Because it's all just kind of been a lot of change, and it seems like it's just kind of smoke, and I'd like a definite diagram on how that goes. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything I absolutely have to report right now, so
Okay,
I'll
good.
let that go.
So I'm simple. I got a Coalition and County meeting tomorrow here. And I think I'm meeting with Senator's office Friday here in Globe, Senator Sinema's office. And that's it until next week. I believe, well, I might have a workforce meeting, maybe, well, maybe not. I don't know. Melissa's grinning at me. So we'll see, but that's about it for me as well. So everybody, thank you so much. It was a long meeting, but we really had good conversation. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.